afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to the September 9th Oklahoma City Planning Commission meeting. We're back on our winter schedule of 2 meetings a month now. If we didn't see you this summer, hope you enjoyed it. First order of business is if you have cell phones, pagers, or anything else, any devices that might make noise or set off, we'd ask that you silence or turn them off at this point. If you are not the applicant and you are here to talk to us about a case, there are sign-up sheets like this on the table outside the chambers. If you would fill one out, identify the case you're interested in, and give it to our secretary, we'd be happy to hear you. And if you've picked up an agenda, by any chance, also out on the table in front, on the back page tells you a little bit about how we, back of the face page, I should say, tells you a little bit about how we conduct our business. And the first order of business is approval of the August 12th minutes.
Move approval minutes.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and second to approve the minutes. Cast your votes. And the minutes are approved. Next item is continuance requests.
We have 3 uncontested requests for continuance. Item 39, which is SPUD 579, item 40, SP 423, and item 41, which is PUD 1422, all requests to continue until September the 23rd.
Did anyone come down today to address us on any of the items just read? 39, 40, or 41?
Move the uncontested continuance.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and second to approve the continuances. Cast your votes. And Commissioner Hensley, you had a item you wanted to discuss for continuance?
7, is that the one you're speaking of?
Yes.
I phoned the applicant today, and he's returned a call to the council office indicating he's agreeable to continue item 7 to the October meeting, 2nd October meeting.
2nd October meeting?
Right.
What date would that be?
Is anybody here to?
Oh, that'll be my next question. Did anybody come down today to talk to us about item 7 on our agenda? Be October 21st, I'm told.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Take a motion in a second then.
So moved.
Second.
What's the second?
Which one?
28th? Second and fourth Thursdays.
2nd and 4th?
So that'd be the 14th. If it's the 14th,
28th.
he wants the 14th, excuse me.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
October 14th.
October 14th would be my motion.
And do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue item 7. Cast your votes. And that's approved. Are there any continuance requests from the public? Okay, thank you. We'll go to the consent docket.
We have 4 items on the consent docket today. Item 1 is to initiate an application to close a platted 10-foot access easement at 1224 Northwest 190th Place. Item 2 is PV 072, an application by Chesapeake Land Company to vacate a portion of Lake George Addition, Capitol View Heights Addition. That's located south of 63rd Street and east of Western Avenue. CE 787 is item 3, is an application by the Oklahoma Employees Credit Union to close Northeast 29th Street for a portion of the west right-of-way line of North Lincoln Boulevard. And item 4 is SN 069, which is to consider a resolution changing the name of Candy Tuft Lane to Cliff Rose Drive.
Did anyone come down today to talk to us about items 1 through 4 that were just read, the consent docket items?
Move the consent docket.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Cast your votes. And that is approved.
Item 5 is SPUD 578, an application by Elk Meadows to MAH to rezone 4710 North Warren Avenue from PUD 1335 to SPUD 578, Ward 1.
Good afternoon, Mr. Commissioner. Pardon me, members of the Commission. My name is Dwight Butler with Anchor Engineering, represent the applicant on this item. I have read the TEs and agree, and will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, no one has signed up.
I'll move approval of the application, noting this is a down zoning significantly of a earlier application that we had approved with respect to density, and so certainly move approval of this.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 5. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 6 is a companion item, C-6235, which is a revised final plat of Elk Meadows.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Dwight Butler with Anchor Engineering, represent the applicant on this item. I have read the TEs and do agree. I would like to, for the record, state on TE number 6 that asks that we extend the sidewalk to line up with the one directly to the south. The one directly to the south dead ends at a power pole. We're going to have to get creative going around the power pole, but other than that, we have no problems.
Okay. Commissioners, again, no one signed up.
I move approval of amending the TE to allow for the sidewalk to circumvent the power pole, or however we need to say that right there.
Okay. Second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 6 as conditioned. Cast your votes. And that's approved. Thank you, Dwight.
Thank you very much.
Item 7 has been continued to October the 14th. Item 8 is SPUD 584, which is an application by Mahesh Naik to rezone 2905 Northwest 70th Street from PUD 1115.
I just can't get over it all.
PUD 1115 to SPUD 584 in Ward 2.
Good afternoon. I'm Rick Larzalier, and I represent...
Your address, please.
It's 4200 Perimeter Center Drive.
Thank you.
And I'm here to represent the applicant, Mr. Mike Nash. And this is an application really to expand the uses from a current PUD 1115. And the applicant purchased these lots in 2005, and at that time it was owned SPUD with about 19 to 25 uses. And then in 2005, when he purchased the lots, it was downzoned to 6 uses. And so we're here to request that the uses be expanded as what's in the staff report, with the 2 that they recommend to be excluded, be excluded.
Janice?
Mr. Chairman, I met with the applicant on site. I had one question for you. Looking at my staff report, it talks about the site-proof screening. As I recall, the fence that's on the west side of the property line is staggered. It goes from 6 feet along the front, which is sort of a more residential, to a higher, maybe even 10 feet toward the back. And
I thought it was all one height, Ms. Powers, but I could be mistaken.
let's do this. I would like for the fence to maintain its current height, whatever that may be.
Oh, which would be acceptable.
If it's staggered, it's fine. If I'm misremembering that, then that's fine too.
Okay.
And you and I had talked about the fact that the fence needs repair across the back, and I assume that'll be taken care of.
You already taken care of it.
Okay, great. And the applicant has actually agreed to exclude 5 additional uses: horticulture, childcare, eating establishments, sit-down, participant recreation and entertainment indoor, and payday or title loan agencies. And is there anybody else here who wants to speak on this item?
No one has signed up, but I agree with your deletions, your uses.
So
What are we adding? I mean, I guess the question is, just so I'm clear, we're now adding then...
Well, this is a case where initially there was a PUD on the property that allowed certain uses. When they came back to us most recently, they thought they knew what they were going to do with the property, which was use it for dry cleaners. And we tailored the PUD very narrowly to permit really only that use. But now they are using the property in a slightly different way. There is a drop-off and pickup for dry cleaning, but it only occupies a small part of the space. And so they've got, the rest of the building is sitting empty. It looks across the street to the south into a solid brick wall. It doesn't seem to me that it is the kind of site that's likely to generate cut-through traffic from the neighborhood. The building's there, it's in place, it's sitting empty, which is not great. We've discussed signage and placement and those kinds of things, and I'm satisfied with the way the PUD, or the current SPUD application is set up in regard to those things. So if there is not anyone else who wishes to be heard.
I just had one question. What's custom manufacturing? What do you anticipate there? What's encompassed in that use unit, and what's your need for that in this particular area?
Well, I think that's in there because it was part of the original SPUD back in 1994.
That's not...
The way I understand that, it's hand-type assembly and manufacturing. I mean, you don't do any actual manufacturing on site of a product. It's like
Typical
research and
uses are like
development.
Jewelry making and that kind of
Yes,
thing. It's
yes.
not machine manufacturing.
It's not manufacturing,
That's right.
That's right.
as we would think of the term.
It's not one that would be an industrial use.
Okay.
I'm going to move approval, Mr. Chairman.
With the deletions you've added.
With these additional deletions and the verbiage about the sign, or
The fence?
the fencing staying as it is.
Okay. Good. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 8 as conditioned. Cast your votes. That's approved.
Item 9 is SPUD 575, application by Chesapeake Land Company to rezone 900 to 928 Northwest 62nd Street from O2 General Office and PUD 1195 to SPUD 575 in Ward 2.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Dennis Fox and Tim Johnson, we're here on behalf of Chesapeake. Dan Ladon is also here, so we're ready to respond to whatever questions you all might have. I will tell you that we have had the opportunity to meet with Mr. and Mrs. Jantz, Ann Alt, and Mr. Johnson has also met with other people in the area. The exhibit that Mr. Johnson is getting ready to put up will show our building. We do not believe that what we're asking for is out of line with what exists in the area. We're asking that this SPUD be approved, which will allow for 25 feet in addition to what's allowed now, which is 75 feet. And the exhibit, you'll see the building that we're proposing here. And it is on the west side of Francis. And what we believe to be the case is we have a building that has setbacks, which, if you look at the existing zoning, would not be required. In fact, if you look at straight O2 zoning, you wouldn't have to have setbacks that exist. On the middle part of the building, the setback's approximately 73 feet, and on the south portion, it's approximately 36 feet. So we have set the building back, and we believe that this is in harmony with the plan. It's in harmony with the area and what's going on. And the reason that we're asking for an additional 25 feet is that we're going to put a restaurant on top of this building. We're here to answer any questions if you have any. As indicated, Dan Ladon is here. I know that Judy Jantz had some questions. Tim attempted to respond to them. Rand Elliott is also here, and I know he wants to speak briefly, but I'll let Tim speak and just tell you a little bit about the project and then the overall project. I'd like Rand for you all to understand what Chesapeake's planning on this building, which is a different look than is on the original campus.
Good afternoon. Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates. Dennis pretty much touched on the site layout, but just to kind of give you a little bit of a background, This is a parking garage that's already in place. There's an office on the north end. So when you drive down 63rd, you'll see the glass building there, and that's, Rand will talk about the new style of this east campus. To the south of the same side is an existing parking garage, too. It was the first one they built. To the south, east of the site is a child care center that we've talked about many times before this board. And we closed 60th on behalf of that. And that is under construction. Steel's coming out of the ground at the present time. One thing that Dennis didn't point out was he gave you the setback from the Francis right-of-way. But the setback from the nearest residential is approximately 240 feet. And that's kind of the extraordinary setback that Dennis was talking about. And I know that some of the concerns that we've heard from the residents is the concern about that additional height. How's that going to impact them? And I tried to graphically illustrate on this board. We're graphically illustrating the difference between the 75 feet, which is permitted, and the additional 25 feet to 100 feet, which is what is our request. And naturally, with the building being a north-south stem, the sun setting in the west would be the biggest impact to them. And as you can see by this exhibit, and at the times and months we've looked at where the sun passes directly over Oklahoma City as it goes north of town in the summer and south in the winter, the most impact would be less than 6 degrees visually, standing at her fence. This is Mrs. Jantz's fence right here. And then horizontally, the impact is virtually null because of the 6-foot-high fence adjacent to her house. If the fence wasn't there, it would make an additional shadow length of 7 feet on the ground. So as you can see, at a distance of 240 feet, the impact is minimal.
I can't read day and time, Tim, but what time of day would that be?
Well, we looked at the 3 different peak months. One is April from 7:15 p.m. to 6:45. Well, I'm sorry, the peak impact would be 7:15 if you were 75 feet high, and 6:45 if you were 100 feet high. And that's a 20-minute difference. In other words, you're going to lose 20 minutes of visual. And then in August, 6:55 to 7:25, so as the sun's more over the top of us, there's less of an impact. And then as the sun goes south, 5:30 and 5:20, that's Central Standard Time.
Okay, as a point of clarification, this application is just for this single building. It's not to adjust the height of anything else within the campus?
That is correct. Now, there could be applications in the future, depending on what is finally determined to be building heights at other locations, but this is just for this location. And I think that brings up a very good point, Mr. Chairman. That is, if you look at the property to the east of where we're asking this rezoning change, the property that's adjacent to Mr. and Mrs. Jantz and Ann Alt, that property within 25 feet would allow for a 75-foot building. So the property to the east, and Tim, maybe we should at the present time allows for a 75-foot building within 25 foot of those two homes. So,
Dennis, isn't in fact only a portion of the building going to be 100 feet? Isn't the restaurant only going to occupy sort of a portion of the top layer?
that is correct. And Tim, would you point out the area?
Is it possible for us to limit that height that narrowly to this portion of the building?
Yes.
And the restaurant would just be for corporate use. I mean, it's not open to the public.
That is correct.
As I understand.
Corporate use only.
Okay.
I think in terms of providing some future precedent, I would feel more comfortable if it were, in fact, limited in that way. The whole block being 100 feet is a little different than, this portion of the building being 100 feet. So if it's possible to do that, I'd like to see that change.
We can agree to that.
Along those lines, Tim, the diagram we're looking at right now, this building is planned. I mean, that is, what you see is what we're going to get.
That's correct.
So our motion could be specific to this.
That's correct. And we can amend the application before it goes to council and have a specific legal description for that portion of the building.
Okay.
Well, what I was going to suggest is, since that's the building as it's drawn, we just make a motion that it be built as designed to that height. No, ever how you want to do it, but my understanding was that this was very specific and it was already planned, and therefore.
Accurate, but just in terms of the possible complications of life, I'm not sure I feel the need to restrict them to the building as it's designed and that it'll be built according to the plans we've seen. I mean, who knows what could come up in the process, but
to answer your question, the restaurant is planned to take this portion and maybe a little portion of the building down in this notch right here. So we could, take a point here and cut it off and take that off.
I think that'd be...
Yes, Jeff.
What is the anticipated start of construction date on this building, and where are we in as it relates to the final plans on this?
This is a design-build project, and so the plans are in final design. The contractor's ready to break ground immediately.
Oh, okay.
So you would see if you've gone by there, the utilities are out of the way. They've actually started doing some grading on the site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have Judy Jantz signed up to speak. If you'd give us your name and address for the record, please.
Judy Jantz, 816 Northwest 62nd Street.
Thank you.
Thank you for having this open hearing so that we can have our questions answered. It was on August 9th that I asked questions of Tim Johnson. On August 11th again, and we have yet to have answers, and I would love to see the diagram of the shade on my garden. And I'm so grateful to hear that it's only going to be a loss of like 30 minutes, the way the building is designed, because the plants that I grow, and I actually hybridize them, they grow nowhere else in the world until they leave my garden. They require a certain amount of sunshine. And so I'm very grateful for that. And I knew Tim could come up with the answer. I tried, and I couldn't get the answer that I was satisfied with at all. I heard comments made about a building 75 feet high just east of Mrs. Alt's fence line in the future. And I wanted to ask you to consider that PUD 1195 gives we as neighbors, as long as we are there, certain protections. And among those protections would be that there could be no windows overlooking her yard at that distance. The building would in fact have to be set back from her fence 60 feet, as you know, before there could be windows on that side. We also have an open area behind our fence that stands protected by PUD 1195, and of course removing the height restriction only for this 900 block might seem like a very small matter, but there are protections in PUD 1195 that were hammered out and agreed upon a number of years ago for our protection, as long as we are there. And since that seems to be an indefinite time from what we've been able to negotiate, those protections in PUD 1195 are very important to us. And we would ask that you would consider that removing PUD 1195 from the 900 block merely sets a precedent for future removal of those protections in the 800 block. I didn't see anything, well, I haven't seen anything because we haven't been privileged to see these things. But I didn't hear anything about where the climate control units will be placed for this building. Right now, we are experiencing 24/7 the noise from climate control at the corner of Francis and Northwest 62nd Street. A large unit, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure Tim could tell you, is placed there and runs 24/7, and it can be very annoying. So my concern would be, where will the climate control units for Building 14 be placed? And this was a question that I asked on Monday, August 9th, and still have yet to get an answer. I also asked about sidewalk access to this building, as it appears that the parking garage to service the employees of this building is to be built, we were told, in the block east of Chartel at 63rd, between 63rd and 62nd Street. So I had asked about the sidewalks for the employees to walk on, as there were not any demonstrated in the original drawings that we received back in August. Tim sent us a very large PDF of a new building design in which I saw that there were steps going down into this block, which makes me wonder, is the building going to set below the street level, and where is the 100 feet to be measured from? On August 11th, after the request for continuance to today was made, I asked a question about the procedure of giving notice for the City Council hearing prior to recommendation of the Planning Commission. I've never seen that done before. I don't know under what circumstances that's acceptable. None of these questions have been answered today. I feel like this is deja vu. When preparing to come before you to ask questions today and to speak our concerns, I really couldn't do better than go back to my notes of April 24th, 2008. Over and over again, we've made these requests, and really we can't ask anymore. But we would like to have designated emergency service routes for fire, ambulance, and police with speedy access from main arterials. We appreciate that truck routes have been agreed upon and that our street has been preserved to the degree that it has been through all these years of construction. It's really nice to have a street in front of our house when you compare it to the streets that have disintegrated around us. And we want to thank everyone that has been on that team with us. For the building of Building 14, the construction of it, although I do love construction immensely, and I serve on the Regional Oklahoma Building Committee, I will ask for enforcement of the 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. construction regulations and for monitoring of construction noise levels. We have endured silently the working of 2 shifts from 4 a.m. till 9:30 p.m. for some time now. We continue to ask for regular street cleaning and for it to be completed before 10 p.m. The construction of this building is definitely going to require a lot of dirt excavation, as we have seen in previous building construction. So we will ask again that trucks carrying dirt be covered and that the dirt stockpiles be wet down on unloading as needed to prevent blowing. We're tired of eating dirt. My poor plants have to be washed off daily. And we'll ask for improved inspection and code enforcement from the city. We really would appreciate anything that can be done to reduce the blowing dirt. We'll ask for better construction site management with a focus on closer adherence to code, as well as the continued consideration for property and residents. Can my questions be answered now?
We'll get some of them answered for you. Some of the others are really, as you say, code enforcement or building inspection issues over which we have no influence at all.
Yes.
But to the extent that the questions you've asked are relevant to our application today, I'll ask Tim or Dennis to respond.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
It'll take both of us, and then I'm going to let Dan speak briefly in regard to construction. Number one, the protections that Judy was talking about in regard to 1195, none of those go away in regard to the property around her house or Ann's house, and so those protections all remain in place. With regard to grade, that grade will be taken from the existing grade that we're dealing with out on the property. Emergency routes, I'm going to let Dan talk about, and I'm also going to let him talk about this climate control unit, and then whatever other questions you all have, I'll let Tim speak to. So, Dan?
Dan Ladon, Chesapeake Energy. In regards to emergency routes, I'm not an expert. The fire marshal has spoken on our behalf in the past that their emergency routes would come from 63rd and Chartel, or from the south off of Grand and up Chartel to the residents in the area. So we would have to have the fire marshal speak again, but that has been the route in the past, and it will not be blocked in any way. In regards to the chillers and mechanical equipment that runs the building, I'm not sure that we've determined the exact location. It potentially can be within that block. We've even talked about a central plant somewhere else east of our campus to run all of our buildings on the east side. So all that is yet to be determined.
Okay. Any questions of Dan while he's here?
There were some other questions that she inquired about as far as sidewalks, access to the building, the proposed building. I'm not sure, might clear that up. Was that a proposed building to the east that you showed that already could occupy 100-foot, and about the window locations, those type of things, if you'd address those.
And one other thing she mentioned too was construction times, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., I believe. Is that correct?
That is the ordinance.
And the washing of the streets.
Well, I can tell you that we're continually sweeping the streets and watering down the dirt. That's been an ongoing issue from day one. So I don't think that we've skipped a day that the wind is blowing that we haven't watered down the dirt, and we do sweep the streets continually. So that will be ongoing. I mean, it helps us as well with our employees that the dirt's not blowing on their cars that are parked in the surrounding areas. In regards to future buildings, we don't have any on the plan today, but the PUD allows for buildings to be built in the block directly behind the residents there on between 62nd and 61st. So at some point in time, if we need to continue to grow and build additional buildings, that is one of our locations that is available to us. What was the other question?
Tim, what runs?
Oh, sidewalks?
Oh, sidewalks, go ahead.
Well, currently there are not any sidewalks along 62nd Street, so anybody that would park to the east would have to walk through the street to get back into the campus area. So,
will that change?
We don't own all the property along 62nd, so we cannot install a sidewalk across the residents' the residents' land there.
Are sidewalks constructed in the easement area, or is it constructed on private land?
I'm not sure what the easement is.
Is it constructed in right-of-ways, or is it constructed on private property?
In the case of the proposed Building 14, the sidewalks will be within the property itself, and I apologize to Judy if the file was too big, I didn't know that, but I did send her a file that showed the access to the building on the east side so that she would see where the sidewalks are, so that the people would get into that building and not have to walk on the street. But all the sidewalks that are pertinent to Building 14 are built on the site. Normally, sidewalks are in the right-of-way.
Any other questions of us?
Mr. Dance, those are the ones we can answer. I'm afraid we can't answer all of the ones that you've asked.
Well, again, I would just like to say that by removing the protections of PUD 1195 in the 900 block, it sets a precedent for the removal of those same protections in the 800 block, which would really affect us. And regarding street cleaning, yeah, it's really great. They've done a good job of it. The only thing that I ask is that it be completed by 10 p.m. because those things can be really noisy, especially when they're malfunctioning. And
I'm not sure what time they actually complete them, but we'll make sure that they are finished by 10. And I know there's not lights on those street sweepers, so they do a majority of it during the daylight.
And yes, Tim, I did see the sidewalks on the new plan, and that was why I had the question about the steps, because the sidewalks were shown stepping down a number of steps, and that's why I was asking about the ground level of the building and from what point the 100 feet will be measured, whether it's at the street level now or at the base of those steps.
I think Dennis answered that. There is a proposed level below ground as part of this building, but the building, the 100 feet would be measured from the existing ground up.
Okay. So the building itself will actually be taller than 100 feet?
Not above ground.
Right. The part you see will not be any taller than 100 feet. The part below ground you won't see.
It's like building a basement.
Yes, I'm familiar with basements. I've seen a lot of them put in over there at Chesapeake. But my question is, and I hate to just hang on this, but my question is, okay, the sidewalks show a number of steps going down, and like the ground level just east of Classen is a number of steps down. The actual ground around the building being much lower than, and I'm talking about the lawn and where the trees are planted and flowers and whatnot, much lower than the street level. So then I'm asking, will the building be 100 feet from that level, the street level?
The answer would be the street level.
Street level.
Existing ground today.
Okay, so from the base of the building at the lawn, it'll be how tall to the top?
I can't answer that for sure, but maybe 115 feet or so.
I see. Thank you.
Commissioners, no one else
Thank
has
you
signed
very
up?
much.
Discussion? Comments?
Well, obviously, I mean, my concern continues to be about the people who remain. What Chesapeake is doing and the plans that they have for their campus, I think, are grand in scale and will be, as the current existing campus is now, probably a show place. I don't have too much concern about it or their plans or trying to micromanage how they do things or where they put things or any of that, because I think they have shown, they've demonstrated that they have a concern about their employees and that they want the campus to be functional for them, and that part of it is great. I do have ongoing concerns about the people who remain for whatever reason. I would encourage both sides to keep working to find a long-term solution to that problem. But in terms of the request that is before us today, which is very, very limited, and correct me, Dennis, if I am wrong, really all we're talking about here is allowing them to add 25 feet for a restaurant to what they are already permitted to do. There isn't any other change that's being contemplated here or anything else that's going to be any different.
I would say that's accurate. When Judy talked about the protections and wanted to make sure that they remained in PUD 1195, those remain because we're not asking anything to be changed around their property.
Well, and they remain not only in Block 800, but they remain on this block with the exception of that height. Is that right?
That is correct.
I have a hard time drawing a line in the sand right there. The single concern that I had was whether we could limit it to a portion of the building that's going to house the restaurant. They've agreed to that, and so I don't have anything else that I can find fault with here. So that's a very negative way to say that. I think this is a positive step as long as we can move forward without impacting the people who continue to live in the area any more than they're being impacted now. And I think those impacts are significant. I applaud Chesapeake's efforts to minimize them, but it is an ongoing construction site, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger as we move forward here. So,
and we will continue to work with Mr. and Mrs. Jantz and also and Alt and the others that are in the area. They're not very many, but we will continue to talk to them with regard to any changes, and we will discuss them before we come before this commission, just like we did on this case.
with that in mind, I will move approval of this application.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 9 as limited by Janice to the restaurant site on the top of the building. And I would comment that voting in support of this is not to suggest that we're creating a precedent that we're going to just bust everything negotiated in PUD 1195. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Item 10 is ABC 719, an application by FOKL, LLC, DBA the Full Circle Bookstore for an ABC 1 with limited alcohol overlaying C3 Community Commercial and SPUD 429 in Ward 2.
I think it'd be better, Paul, if it was FOLK instead of FOKL, but that's just me.
Okay. Paul Lefevre for the applicant. Jim Tolbert is with me today. He's the principal of Full Circle Bookstore. Happy to answer any questions. There is one clarification that I would like to make to the last sentence of the staff report. As anyone who's been to the store is aware, there is a entrance to the bookstore from the north exterior face, and there is also an entrance to the patio area on the south face of the wall that surrounds the patio. But other than that, happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Well, I couldn't imagine giving up that access. No one has signed up, Commissioners.
If no one else is, I was going to ask Mr. Talbert if he didn't want to just go whole hog and put in a margarita machine, but since the application is limited to an ABC1, I guess we'll have to wait on that. Since nobody else has signed up to speak, I'll move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 10. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Item 11 is PUD 1415, an application by Crafton Tull Sparks to rezone 11510 West I-40 Highway from CHC Commercial Highway and PUD 1337 to PUD 1415 in Ward 3.
Good afternoon. I'm Kendall Dillon with Crafton Tull Sparks, representing the applicant. Real briefly, the purpose of this application is to permit an upper-end RV park. We feel like that there's a good market as well as a need in this particular area for this type of a project. We feel like that it's very compatible with the surrounding properties. In fact, obviously shown on your maps there, we're bound on the north by I-40, and I'll go ahead and mention that we are providing an additional 30-foot landscape buffer there along I-40. We've also agreed to the 20% additional landscaping because it's an appearance corridor, and obviously if you notice on your conceptual plan as well, we've taken some steps to try to minimize the number of campsites that would actually front or back into I-40. Then on the east, there is a PUD, which has an existing hotel. On the south, obviously, is some R4 with an existing apartment. And then on the west, we do have, are abutted by some single, it's a PUD, but it's developed as a single-family residential. We've got about 8 lots that back up to us there. But if you'll notice, there's a drainage way that separates our site from theirs. There's a lot of trees and vegetation in that as well, so we've designated that as a common area and a preserve area to help buffer that. And I will also mention that at the time we made the application on this, we were contacted from some of those homeowners, and they had some concerns. So we have met with them back in May, actually, and I was out of town, so Phil Hagan with our office attended that meeting. But we appreciate them working with us. I've been dealing with Andrea Jackson. I believe she's here today, and she's been very cordial to work with, and I appreciate them being patient and working with us on the deal. But just to give you a highlight of some of their concerns, and then she can address the ones I left. But I know that they had an issue and some concerns regarding drainage along that drainage way. So we modified our application to provide the detention that you see on that conceptual plan. And then obviously, once we develop, then we'll be there full time. My client will have rights to the property, and we'll help to make sure that that drainage way is maintained so that the brush and those sort of things don't collect and increase that flooding problem that would be there. They also had a concern about some lighting, which we've obviously agreed through the PUD to provide the shields and the shades and to direct those light beams away from their residential subdivision as well as I-40. I think their other concern, and one of their primary concerns, was just the site and the visibility from their neighborhood. And so what we've actually done, we already had the buffer, but we've actually increased that buffer a little bit more, which really, not only did we increase the buffer, but the overall magnitude of our site, we went from 96 campsites down to 61. And then as well, we agreed to put the fence along our west boundary on the east side of the drainage way so that we'll still have all those trees and those sort of things between them and our fence even. And then we agreed to make sure that that's an 8-foot fence along that property line. So that was a few of their concerns. I think they also had some concerns about traffic that she'll probably mention. I think, but if you look at that, I think we're very compatible with surrounding properties. I think also if you look at the, in light of the current zoning on this site, you know, it's a PUD with a C3 underlying zoning that permits 23 C1, C3 uses, including retail sales, office, and even fast food with drive-through. So obviously, we're coming in, we're asking for one single use. You've got a plan as to what it is that we want to do. We're asking for 2 monument signs, 8 foot, 100 square feet, whereas the current PUD allows for 3 freestanding signs, one of them being a 40-foot pole sign with 200 square feet. So that's a little bit of the difference between the current zoning and what we're proposing. So we think that it's a really good application. And once again, we think there's a good market, a need for this area, and we just ask for your approval.
Okay, Andrea Jackson. If you would give us your name and address for the record and pull that microphone down a little bit. Thank you.
You're welcome. Andrea Jackson, 210 Steeport in Yukon. I'm here to represent Silver Eagles Homeowners Association. And like Kendall stated, we met with Crafton Toll Sparks early on in the project and presented the concerns that we had, and they have addressed all of them for us. The only other concern that we had was the traffic on Mustang Road. Not necessarily the increase in traffic, but the type of traffic, the big RVs. And there's a single point access road that they'll have to use in order to get to the park. And we're just concerned with how the big bus RVs are going to have an impact on traffic, trying to get into that. So we were just requesting that perhaps a traffic study could be done for the safety and feasibility of the access point on that road.
Mustang Road has 4 truck stops on, or 3 on...
Morgan.
Morgan. Oh, Morgan. Okay, you're right. I'm at the wrong intersection.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, I withdraw that comment. Trying to think, did Stuart tell us there was a plan for Mustang Road and I-40 and a reworking of that intersection? Pardon? Earlier today? So there are no plans to do anything here at this point that we know of? I'm just trying to think about whether...
I just have a question for Ms. Jackson. Where do you get access into your... You don't get any access into your neighborhood off of the service road, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so all your access comes off of Reno? And is it Mustang there?
Yeah. It's the entrance to our neighborhood is either off of Check Hall Road or Reno and Mustang Road.
Okay. All right. So to get into the subject site, then
to get into the RV park?
The RV park, they get somehow to the intersection at Mustang and Reno, either exiting off the interstate and turn and go back to this service road.
Yeah, we'll go to get to our neighborhood. You exit on Mustang Road and turn. I'm not good at directions, so let me get the bearings. West. Right. On Reno, and then into our neighborhood.
Okay.
Their access road is directly off of Mustang Road. Right now, there's an access road that kind of cuts across Mustang Road. McDonald's and IHOP and Sherwin-Williams, Homeland, is on the east side of the street, and then the access point to the RV park, Brahms, and the 2 hotels are on the west side.
Okay.
But a traffic study would address volume and not the kind of vehicle and how it would maneuver.
Okay.
That's right. I was about to say, because typically an impact study doesn't really look at the nature of the vehicle. We look at the number of vehicles that are generated on a per-site basis and what their impacts are on the surrounding street system. In this particular case, like a larger, slow-moving vehicle like this, drivers of those vehicles just have to wait till they get adequate gaps in traffic on Mustang Road in order to, enter or leave the site.
Okay. Well, that was our only concern. We're already having some issues there at that intersection, so that was the remaining concern that we had.
Thank you.
I just have a question. Are we still, though, going to get some additional queuing there in that area based on the size of the vehicles? I know that when we've looked at some other areas where we're putting in RV parks, RV storage, et cetera, we've considered the size of the vehicle with respect to lining up. Do you have a view on that?
In this particular case, it's not like, this is not a site that you can treat in the same manner as you would like a truck stop. where you've got continuous, inflow and outflow of vehicles because they're there for refueling purposes or other type things. These are trips that are, typically, this is a destination for them, so there's not a lot of in and out traffic.
Okay. No one else has signed up, Commissioners?
I wanted to ask Dylan, if I could. I mean, how do you make allowance for the size of these vehicles, getting them in and off, off the street and into the...
If the concern is the access road, you have to take into consideration how we design arterial streets as well as access. Well, we've already got fire trucks that the width, the driving lanes, the turning radius, and all of those things, even from your own standards and from an engineering perspective, are set up already for fire trucks, emergency vehicles. If you think about how many semi-trucks actually are going to Brahms, to the Sonic, to the Sherwin-Williams, to the Homeland, to all of those, they're already set up and designed to accommodate those sort of vehicles.
Even though that's true, there are a dozen places that you can think of off the top of your head where there are giant ruts up over curbs and, on grass because trucks that really ought to be able to make those turns don't. So I guess the only thing I would say is that I would like for you to give due consideration to that.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, any other comment, action?
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 11. Cast your votes. And you approve. Thank you.
Item 12 is PUD 1416, an application by Newey Family Partners, LLC, to rezone 3442 South Douglas Boulevard from I-1 Single Family to PUD 1416, Ward 4.
I'm David Neff, Ancon Development, 252 Northwest 70th Street. I'm the developer. This is my partner, Darren Miller.
Darren Miller, 7017 North Robinson.
Okay.
And we're here to answer any questions you guys might have on the PUD.
Well, David, just a quick synopsis. You're proposing an emergency center for St. Anthony's, no beds.
Yes.
Be no overnight patients, in other words.
Yes.
Tell us just a little bit, please.
Well, this will be a three-story building, and the bottom floor will be emergency room services and diagnostic services, and the upper two floors will be physician offices. There will be no beds in this building. There will be no overnight stays. That was one of the concerns that Tinker had, along with a helicopter pad, which we eliminated. We've spent the last 3 or 4 months working with them and trying to arrive at a solution that everybody would be happy with. And we think that we've done that, and we think that we meet the I-2 zoning and the Southeast Sector Plan and the Joint Land Use Study.
And the out parcels will be limited to medical-related?
Right, medical office.
I mean, we're not going to get a fast food restaurant with a drive-in. They're going to be medical-related.
No, okay. Medical office use.
Our staff report recommends denial of this application because it's not in compliance with the plan. You have written us a very detailed response to that, saying why it is. And I'd like to just clarify a few things. This is a 3-story building, and it's not just St. Anthony's ER.
Right.
The ER is on one. And then there are outbuildings that go along with this. What is the purpose of those buildings?
Office. They're office buildings.
And what kind of office?
First, of course, physician offices. Second, they could be professional offices.
Well, at one point I was told that maybe your office. And then to comply with the plan, I believe your position is you're doing an I-2 PUD, and that's what the plan calls for, I-2.
Yes.
But all the uses that are outlined, you have 7 uses outlined. None of those uses are industrial uses, are they?
That's not entirely accurate. I think we want to show a presentation which will show from the the studies that are being done and what is being recommended for the site. It will show clearly that we are following all the recommendations of both the joint land use study and the Southeast Sector Plan. So,
Okay, then my question goes back to staff. If that's true, why do we have the recommendation we have?
We did not consider this use to fit within the parameters of either the joint land use study or the Southeast Sector Plan as defining by what constitutes an industrial use.
Well, and that's my problem. I've been sitting on this commission for a long time, and we have people bring us these kind of uses in industrial zoned areas, and we say, guys, go back and rezone it to what your uses are. Here, it looks to me like there's a circumvention of the plan. We know the plan says it's I-2, so we'll have an I-2 PUD, but these aren't truly I-2 uses as we look at them in our zoning code. I have a hang-up on that. I don't have a hang-up, frankly, about having an emergency room. But from a process and a procedural standpoint, this just doesn't look right to me. It looks like we're winking at the plan. Yeah, we know what the plan says, so we'll call it I-2, but our fingers are crossed. We really don't have an I-2 use here. We have administrative and professional offices, business support services, medical services general, medical restricted, personal services restricted, and research, all of which, if you would bring us those requests, as many people have in the past, in an I-2 deal, we'd tell you to go back and get your zoning straight.
One question I've got along that same line is that under I-2, we've got a medical services restricted, we've got medical services general. Sure, I don't understand why that doesn't comply under the zoning. That doesn't make sense to me.
Maybe those two uses do, but these other five certainly don't. And Russell doesn't answer that, I guess.
As long as everything in that PUD is a medical use, then it would fit the I-2 zoning, right?
That's not how I understood the process, but we seem to be at loggerheads here with our staff recommendation and this very detailed response from the applicant, and I'd like to see us get on the same page.
I think it'll really clarify.
I'd love to respond to this. My name is Peter Petromelli, 7017 North Robinson with Miller Architects. We've actually, on a number of occasions, tried to meet with staff to discuss this. The confusion comes in the Southeast Sector Plan because they ask for an industrial area, but they make it specific to an industrial office park. They don't want, the Southeast Sector Plan repeatedly states, and we showed up here direct verbiage from it, they discourage strip commercial. They want to limit new developments to industrial office parks or high-tech industrial, which are small park developments, very similar to an office park, but more restricted. They encourage industrial park design, and they want high-quality industrial developments, industrial park developments. So what they've specifically indicated that they do not want to see is large strip industrial factory-type buildings. What they prefer, and what they're actually not just preferring, but what they limit this to is office park, industrial office park developments. And so when we fashioned this, we actually went to the planning staff and said, what would you recommend we set this PUD at? And JJ and his staff had said, well, an I-2, but limit it to these office park developments. And so that's what we did. We came up with these 7. They're all permitted uses in the office park development. In the industrial office park development use. Everyone in I-2, everyone in the high-tech industrial park development use. They're all permitted. The next thing we went through is we went through the Joint Land Use Study and the AICUZ study, which was done by Tinker Air Force Base. And it's basically a 250-page document that can be summed up in terms of use compatibility by two means. One is where your building is located in terms of noise contours and where it is in terms of the accident potential zones. And up here, you'll notice that our building is in the noise contour of a 65 decibel zone, and it's outside any of the accident potential zones, and it's outside any of the clear zones. And from that, they have a real clear graph that shows you exactly what type of uses are permitted and what types aren't permitted. And when you look at what we've done, ours is in the Y permission, and they have a table on the next page that tells you what Y means. And Y stands for yes, which in their terms is their highest level of compatibility. So the uses that we're proposing aren't just in conformance with the Joint Land Use Study and the Oklahoma City Municipal Code, but also meet the highest level of compatibility with the Joint Land Use Study and the AICUZ study. It's their compatibility without restrictions. They don't have noise restrictions on our buildings, even though we're putting them in there. They don't have size restrictions on their buildings, even though we're putting them on there. They don't have height restrictions on their buildings, even though we've met with FAA and we're sending submissions to them to make sure that we meet with those and we meet their highest level of compatibility, even though there aren't restrictions on those. And then we've also met with, even though Tinker Air Force Base has their own set of clear zones, we've actually went above and beyond making sure that it met all of the airports department's zones, even though they're not the ones having jurisdiction over it. We've met with them. We've met with the FAA and air traffic control to make sure that we are outside of any of their clear zones. And not only are we outside of it, but we're 2,400 lineal feet outside of it. We're almost a half a mile away from the nearest clear zone. And so basically, and this is basically all right out of the Joint Land Use Study and the Southeast Sector Plan and the Municipal Code, Oklahoma City Municipal Code. I don't know how the staff...
I'm not trying to cut your presentation short, but I read all of that in your letter. Your letter was very good, but it is in direct conflict with our staff analysis and recommendation, and that's what I'm trying to reconcile here. I'd like to see the emergency room operation there. I don't know about maybe some of this other stuff, but why can't we get on the same page, Russell?
If I understand this slide, these uses are the uses that are proposed in your application.
Yes, sir.
Right. And when you say permitted, you indicate that all of those uses are permitted in I-2.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So I'm lost.
Well,
where's our controversy?
I-2, because it's a heavy industrial area, permits many, many lower uses. You can have residential in I-2.
I get it,
but you know, these guys they're not proposing residential here, certainly. But again, my problem is not that we want to put the emergency room there.
Right.
It's one of process, and it's either in conformity with the plan, as they say, or it's not in conformity, as the staff says. And they're miles apart is my problem, Mike.
I get it, but I guess a second question would be is if the applicant said, I want it medical office, for example. Right? I mean, to take your argument one step further, Nick, you're saying it should be zoned O something, medical office, et.cetera.
Then it would come back clearly not in accordance with the plan.
With the plan, with the Southeast Sector Plan.
Yeah. And that's my point. What we have done very consistently over the years is match the zoning to the use. Well, in this case, the proposed use is not allowed unless you go to the heavy zoning district, which they have. And I think that's perhaps what the staff is hung up on.
Well, I don't think we're getting gamed. I mean, I guess the question I got is, do we care? But in this particular instance, the uses are permitted in the zoning district, 1. 2, the uses in this PUD are limited to permitted uses. And so I don't know that we're going to have a situation where we're saying, these are the uses we're going to put here. We're putting no other uses with respect to this PUD, if I understand the application properly. Yes, sir. So it is pretty much of what you see is what you get.
Well, and also, and I see what...
I see your point, Nick. I'm not...
Yeah. If this goes forward with approval, the only two things that's on the use permit would be restricted or general medical services restricted, period. No other uses.
What?
Administrative and professional offices.
No, sir.
They have 5 more uses there.
Well, but I see it from a different perspective according to what is allowed in the it's I-1 and I-2 is medical services restricted, medical services general. And that's it. I don't have the full use of I-2. All I've got is those 2. It was my understanding that it was strictly a medical use period, that in conversation with Mr. Neff. And that's the only way. I wouldn't want to see architectural offices. I wouldn't want to see real estate offices. I wouldn't want to see attorney's offices. I want to see either dentist office, some kind of medical use. And if it is related to a medical use, then I think it should be permitted. Then that's what it says.
Well, yeah, what you're saying is I've got an accounting firm and I have doctor clients, so I can office him.
Well, that's what that would not be.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I think the question that I have is maybe step back a little bit, maybe a bigger question, and I guess we could actually get the staff to tell us what they're thinking instead of trying to guess. But it seemed to me that in our discussions of all of this area, and as we were going through the sector plan adoption and so forth, one of the things that we talked a lot about was the fact that there's not enough land in large tracts that's set aside for industrial uses. And it seems to me that the heart or the intent, really, of the language of the plan with respect to this property being set aside for instance, an industrial park, has to do with that. I mean, yes, it could be offices, yes, it could be an office park-like setting, but industrial. And while I guess we can argue all day about whether specific uses do or do not fall within that purview as far as medical uses and whether you can squeeze them into an industrial district or not, the point, it seems to me, is more, is this land that we want to see developed for industrial purposes or not? And I thought we had answered that question when we adopted the plan.
Yes, the applicant's saying is, by your definition, I am developing this land for industrial uses. These are uses that are industrial in your code, which I'm trying deeply to figure out how we get outside of that, and how we get away from that particular point.
Got a step further, Mike. Then
that don't make it industrial.
Then go to the staff recommendation. Say again, Russell, if that's correct, why would we recommend denial due to the recommendations of the Southeast Sector Plan and the Joint Land Use Study? That's the staff recommendation.
Okay. When you read their actual recommendations for denial...
That's my question. You've made your point, and I understand your point. I may even agree with your point, but like I said, we're at loggerheads here.
The staff who made this recommendation are the same staff who were involved from day one through the JLUS and the Southeast Sector Plan process. So they understand what the intent of both those documents were regarding uses in this location and within the scope of both of those plans. The intent with the limitation to the industrial uses was to limit the number of people that would be in that area on the basis of recommendations from the Tinker Air Force Base about what was appropriate in the vicinity of Tinker Air Force Base. So the interpretation of what constitutes an industrial use in this case is different. Even while both are permitted, the intent was there would be less population in that area and therefore less conflict with the operations of Tinker Air Force Base. That was the basis of their recommendation for denial on this. Now, having said that, I may not, completely agree that this is in conflict with the intent of what Tinker was trying to accomplish. They have not articulated that.
Let's sort of hold this in abeyance for a few minutes. We've got 3 people signed up who want to speak on this. So let's hear that perspective, and then maybe we can come back and draw some conclusions. First person is Larry Terry. Is he here? Sure. If all 3 of you are going to talk, I'm going to ask you to not repeat each other so we get the information we need, but one time will be enough. Your name and address.
Name is Paige Vaughn. I'm the CEO at Midwest Regional Medical Center. I live at 10529 Foxhorn Circle, which is in Midwest City.
Okay.
It's actually about a mile from the proposed site. I just want to spend a couple of minutes speaking to the group here, and I appreciate the time, and I'll be brief. This project was not known by us essentially until this morning, so we had no real information or time to analyze. It's the first time we've seen it. I want to bring out a couple of points to you, and I realize maybe some of the things I speak to will possibly even broader than your role here, but I think they're important points to be made. As I said, I'm the CEO in Midwest City. I'm also very involved in the chamber with Tinker Air Force Base, interrelate with Tinker several times a week, and a few interesting points. But first, a little bit about our hospital. We have a full-service hospital, much like St. Anthony's, that serves our community. A couple of people here with me today will speak to their roles. They're part of our team. We have the second largest ER in Oklahoma City, which functions at our hospital location approximately 5 miles from this proposed site. We also, much like St. Anthony's, operate our medical staff, medical space, and that type of thing throughout our community. We serve our community. We're focused on it. So again, I'm a little bit dismayed and not of understanding why we would need an emergency room in our community when we run the emergency room. So that's my first question. Second question is being involved with Tinker and knowing how extremely important their mission is to, number one, their national defense. I mean, they're there to fly aircraft, as we all know, and we're there to support their mission. All of that land and all that availability is for future growth and viability of Tinker, and the 2 things don't add up to me to slide in already existing medical service with full support from all of the physicians and the needed things to operate an emergency room. As a 25-year hospital administrator, I don't understand how you can have a freestanding emergency room without any support. So that's something that, when you look at the patient's perspective on this, that's a whole important issue that's not been discussed. Is that the right thing for patients? But again, looking at Tinker, I don't get it. That's just, to me, I live in that area. It's a high level of noise 5 miles away. And the end of that flight line, I'd have to wonder that it's not closer than a half mile from that location, because I've spent a lot of time there. And the level of noise is terrific. You know, I've lived there. And to have a sensitive emergency type service within that close of proximity to the flight line just doesn't make sense to me. No one in Midwest City or the community, the mayor,
City Council, City Administrator, my board chairman, Russell Smith, have any knowledge of this project. And I'm not saying that indicates whether they can go forward or not, but if you look at, I think, as Ms. Powers was suggesting, that zoning is about community planning, and communities overlap, Midwest City and Oklahoma City certainly. They collaborate, they work together, they make sensible decisions. I don't think you'll find anybody on my board at the hospital thinking this makes any sense whatsoever. And as an example of other people in the community, the Chamber of Commerce has no knowledge of this. The developers, business development personnel. And most interestingly to me is the colonel in charge of the air wing over medical services at Tinker. Discussed this with him this morning. He has no knowledge of the project. He's in charge of all health care at Tinker at the base. So again, it's just a total lack of knowledge within our community as to what's going on. Granted, it's in Oklahoma City, but it's actually just a few yards from our community. So looking at it from that perspective, I have a lot of questions that we wouldn't have enough time for to go through. But for medical planning, it's not a good project when you haven't even spoken to your counterparts in the community, the physicians. And I'll, at that point end, make myself available for any questions, but again, we have two other people to speak.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Give us your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Dan Donnell. My address is 2825 Park Lawn Drive, Midwest City. It's where I'm a practicing emergency physician. I'm here to represent the emergency department, and also I'm current chief of staff. And so, as Paige mentioned, we just found out about this today, so we've had very little time to prepare any kind of response. But I can only go based on what I heard, that this was going to be a freestanding emergency department. In general, freestanding emergency departments are put in places where there is a need, where that community has outgrown the infrastructure and there's no medical service. We have medical services, as Paige said, just 5 miles away. It wasn't that many years ago that St. Anthony's was fighting for survival in their mission to provide care for the central Oklahoma City area. Our mission is also to provide excellent care, just like St. Anthony's does, for Midwest City. This will impact us. I would definitely appreciate at least a delay in time before you all vote on this, to give us a chance to really evaluate this and present ourselves in a better fashion. But this freestanding emergency department will impact the city of Midwest City. I don't know how they will provide emergency care, true emergency care in a full freestanding emergency department is really impossible. So a really critically ill patient coming into that facility will have to be transferred to another facility. Will they transfer to the closest facility, which would be us, or will they truly helicopter patients into St. Anthony's?
Well, they won't helicopter them because they can't use a helipad, right? I sort of need to focus your comments. We're not in a position, nor is it our responsibility, to look at proximity of other medical facilities. This is a land use issue for us.
Right. I understand.
And we get requests for fast food stores next to each other, gas stations across the street from each other, and so forth, and it's not our job to decide where people want to place their business. So,
yeah, I understand that. And my only qualified ability to be here is about patient care, and I don't think good patient care will be served by having a facility that competes with our hospital just a few miles away. In today's age, it's a difficult environment just without that kind of competition, but I'm not sure it serves the patient's best interest, and that's my only point.
Okay, thank you. Well, we get Mr. Terry last, but not least.
Larry, yeah, start first. Larry Terry, 2825 Park Lawn Drive, Midwest Regional Medical Center. I am the Emergency Medical Services Director there. I've been there for 25 years in charge of medical emergency services. I'm not going to reiterate over what Dr. Donnell and Mr. Vaughn have gone over, but our focus again is clinical care, what's best for the patient. And you have to understand that getting our focus, delivery of quality patient care, getting that patient to the closest, most appropriate facility in a timely manner is the utmost goal. And the dilution of another facility that would not offer all the comprehensive services of a full-service hospital would be a situation where a patient may end up at a location only to be transferred later on, instead of going to the closest, most appropriate facility in the first place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, we're... Sure, Dick.
Do we need to rebuttal some of those comments?
Not if they have to do with competition of services, because that's really not something that we can consider.
Well, I just want to say this will be a state-of-the-art ER with full diagnostic services. You know, it's going to be the most advanced ER facility in that part of
Our issue is, I think, specifically, does it meet with our zoning code and requirements and our master plan, and are we comfortable with that, either because it somehow fits into an industrial use or because we think maybe it needs to be rezoned?
If I could, I'd just like to finish by saying we were a little bit beside ourselves trying to figure this out as well. We've done everything we can, and our intention was to always follow the regulations and requirements of all the bodies that affect this site. And
we're not disputing that.
We
understand
done that, and I don't know how we could do any different.
You sought guidance and followed it. Well, I understand. Jim?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a recommendation. I'm going to make a recommendation for approval for medical services general and medical services restricted, period, and for vote.
Is that acceptable to the applicant?
Yes, sir.
We need a second.
Second.
Nick wants to say...
Before we vote, come back to staff. If they cut those 5 uses and get down to just these 2, does that change the staff recommendation? They're not industrial, I understand, but does that change the... And I heard everything you said.
It goes back to what the intent of both of those planning exercises were in terms of protecting the operations of Tinker Air Force Base and in trying to identify what would be the most appropriate uses in that area. Okay. With the discussions that have been held on this facility with Tinker itself, it's quite possible that they may have expanded their understanding of what would not be in conflict with their operations. But that's speculative, of course. From a planning perspective, the location makes sense for this kind of facility. We wouldn't necessarily see it in conflict with the operations of Tinker Air Force Base, but we are respecting the process that we went through in the development of both of those plans and what was a long discussion with the development of both those plans in terms of what was considered to be appropriate in that area.
Okay, one last question. In the discussion with the applicant, many times when we have a conflict, staff comes back and suggests a plan amendment to resolve a conflict with the plan. Has there been any discussion of that?
There hasn't.
A couple of things that, if there was any chance of this being detrimental to Tinker, I would not be for it at all. And I don't think anybody in this room would be for it.
Jim and I agree with you on that. And in my discussion with some of the personnel at Tinker, in a one-on-one candid discussion, I don't think they have a problem with the ER per se. I think they have a problem with what could expand because of this, and I think you've addressed that by the use limitations.
Okay.
So I believe we may be headed the right direction.
I think, too, that the applicant has, I think one of the biggest concerns of Tinker was the helipad. And most of the comments directed toward that was because of the helipad. That has been eliminated. And, I think from that, we can move forward. I hope we can move forward.
I agree with you.
There was also a discussion about, potential closure of South Douglas at some point in time, but I understand that that is not on the table either.
Well, even if it was, where they're located,
It's not affected. This is not affected.
Right.
And I fully expect Douglas hopefully will be closed, because what that will mean will be additional expansion of the base to the east, which hopefully that will happen.
Russell, my question, I guess I would direct to you then. Am I totally off base with respect to these issues concerning the reservation of property for industrial development? The fact that you can find permitted use within the industrial list doesn't mean it's an industrial use.
Right.
Wasn't part of the thinking about this land, I get the protection of Tinker, but wasn't part of the thinking about this land that we need to preserve these tracts for actual industrial development?
Yes, and that has, we've had lengthy discussions with the Chamber of Commerce, who do not consider this particular site to be conflicted regarding their objectives.
That's what I was going to say, because of the size and the location of the lot. It's not part of that.
That, Janice, and again, going back to some of the discussions I had with folks at Tinker, there's also a sliver of land to the south of this that is not base property, and that is not industrial. So they're not concerned. Their concern is that this grows into all this area and limits further base expansion. And I believe Jim changes reduce that possibility a great deal.
We now have a motion amending the application to medical services general, medical services restricted, and we have a second to that motion. Are you ready to vote? Cast your votes. And you're approved.
Thank you.
Item 13 is SPUD 576, an application by Teen Challenge of Oklahoma to rezone 2212 Southwest 55th Street from R1 Single Family to SPUD 576 in Ward 4.
Good afternoon. My name is Wayne Gray. I'm the State Director for Teen Challenge of Oklahoma. Well, briefly, we have 4 different locations across the state of Oklahoma with the state administrative offices here in Oklahoma City. We provide faith-based recovery services for people with life-controlling issues, for adult men, adult women, also adolescent boys and girls. What we are applying to do is to open a residential men's facility using 2 of the buildings on a 5-acre tract that is owned by Inner City Action Group. And in that would be, I think the term that is many of you are comfortable with is sober living, home, house. What does separate us from maybe some of the traditional sober living houses, we are a program, a long-term residential program. Our residents do not come and go. They enroll in our program. They are there. They're under 24-hour supervision. We have live-in staff. They do not hold jobs on the outside. They're not even allowed to have their own vehicle. And so it is more structured than I would think some of the sober living houses, which are more transitional housing. Our programs do accept people that are under a court order. That's not early release from prison. That's someone who has a nonviolent crime, usually drug-related, that's ordered to do some type of rehab or faith-based recovery services. Again, our programs are not traditional rehab. That I've since learned that that's a special application anyway, and so I guess to change it from when we were here last month is that at this particular location, we would not accept people that are under any kind of court order to us. And that kind of changes it from when we were up here last month.
And you're proposing a limited number of clients at this point, limiting to 35, is that correct?
35, yes. And that's a 5-acre tract. We would have 2 buildings. We would enter into some type of rental agreement with Inner City Action Group, and we would have buildings separated from anything that they're doing. They have a church and they have some things going on there, and we would have 2 buildings towards the back there that would be separate from what the Inner City Action Group does in the Inner City Church.
Okay. We do have 3 or 4 people signed up to speak, Commissioners. Karen Jones, please, if she's here. If you would, Ms. Jones, give us your name and address, pull the microphone down so we'll be able to hear you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Jones. I live at 2218 Southwest 54th Street. And I feel that this would endanger our neighborhood. We have elderly people that are on walkers, wheelchairs, and some on walking canes. They walk the neighborhood early morning and late at night. I fear for their well-being as long as their safety. And I work late nights, and it's sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning when I arrive home, and I have to drive from my car to my porch to unlock my door because I live alone. And I'm kind of afraid in that area as it is. It's bad enough with the drugs in the area. We have a bunch of trouble with drugs. And also, I feel that it takes professional people in this kind of a situation, not just church people, because these are professional people within themselves are in drugs. They can convince anybody of what they want to do, and they can easily access on this property. And if you look at the one picture that I brought in, there is on picture I think it's number 3. Well, on number 1, there is no security at all. It's easy access in and out. They also have attached a picture of the church that has a damaged chain link fence. That's on picture number 2. And then also there is graffiti on one of the garage doors, which you can tell right there it's access for gang members. They can easily get in there. And they could even distribute their drugs through that. And right across the street from the church is 2 apartment complexes. A creek divides the 2 that is full of drugs. And that is so close to the church. And then just a block down, it starts a school zone. There is a school 2 blocks away. I see children walking to school every day, going and coming. And at times, we have the time zone, which it is going to school, it's still dark. And I feel for these kids also. And when they're not in school, they're out riding their bicycles by themselves in the neighborhoods. And also, and then I was also informed that they say that the neighborhood supports this. None of the neighbors that I've spoke to support it at all. In fact, they are kind of afraid as it is because it's not a good neighborhood as it is. We are full of drugs. And I'm just hoping that you guys can see that, our concerns for our neighborhood. And I just ask the board to just support and help the elderly in our neighborhood and the children that are wandering around in our neighborhoods. And with this facility in there, where there's a will, if they want out, they will get out. Where there's a will, there's a way. Because they are the professionals within themselves. They can convince and fool anybody when you're on drugs. And I just hope you take this into consideration. We all just appreciate anything that you can do to help us to keep this out of our neighborhoods, because we don't need it. It's bad enough. And there is a daycare in that church and a playground over to the south side. And I wouldn't want any of my grandchildren, children, playing on that area with that in that area. And same complex. It's just not safe. I appreciate everything you can do for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Shockley.
Gary Shockley, 1941 South Council. If you don't mind, I think I need to defer right now to the pastor of the church, because she would be able to answer some of those specific questions.
Okay. Kenneth Garrison.
I'm Deborah Burke, 3508 Southwest 123rd Place. I'm the pastor of Inner City, the church.
I guess we'll hear from you now then.
Oh, had you called him? I thought you'd have asked me to come up.
I did call him.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'll come back.
Mr. Garrison.
Yes, sir. My name's Kenneth Garrison. I live at 2216 Southwest 57th Street. And what she's saying is correct, but that ain't the only problem. We'll drive down the property value to begin with. 2 years ago, my house was worth $85,000. I'd be lucky to sell it for $35,000 right now with the drug problem that we got on 5601 South Rockwood. That's the drug house. Southwest 57 at 2228, that's the drug house. 5601 Barnes, that's the drug house. 5628, that's the drug house. 5612, that's the drug house. That's just in my neighborhood alone. I've been broken into several times. The whole community where I live in that little neighborhood right there, they're all against it. They love to come, but they're all elderly people. They're scared. I ain't scared of nobody. And with this city church, it's a good program, but wrong neighborhood, because between Southwest 29th, the May, all the way to Western, all the way up to Penn. There's nothing but drugs all through the house, through the whole neighborhood there. Police department, I've been dealing with them. They're so far behind they can't handle the manpower to begin with. Tried drug enforcement, impact. They got so many stacks, they just working one by one, which I understand that. 2 years ago, I had a crack house next door to me. I had to go into the DEA agent down there on North Lincoln. They helped me get rid of that problem. When they raided that house, they had meth lab in the garage, 30 pounds of cocaine, $45,000 in cash, 21 stolen guns, and all had prior felonies. Police officer ever goes, "You gonna move?" "No. You ain't running me out. I've been here 13 years. If they want that, they got it." But with this teen challenge, wrong location, grant, their minds are in the right direction to helping them out, but with Chesapeake Bay, Toby Keith, Boone Pickens, Barry Switzer, supporting this program, that's fine. It's just tax write-off. I asked them about their cash income flow. Well, where y'all do that? Didn't get no answer. There's no fence around that where they're wanting to put this area up. It's open. I mean, you should be like me walking right in here. There's no security, no fences. And what fences they got 50 foot of a stockade fence. It's rotted. About where they're talking about where the building is, it's right across from that. Where the daycare there, and the school down the road, and those houses I mentioned in my neighborhood, they're there 24/7, in and out, in and out. Now, they say it's volunteer. I understand that. They say it's not being monitored. I understand that. So you're going to have security. That's fine. They can't do it 24/7, though. If someone wants to get access to their drugs and come back to that place, shoot up the smoke, they're just finding a place for them to hide at. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ms. Burke. Sorry about that confusion.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Just a few things that have been addressed. I am the pastor of Inner City Church. I'm an ordained minister with the Assemblies of God. Our number one concern is the community God has placed us in. We're in that community, and I realize the neighborhood we're in, and that's why we're there. It needs help. It needs hope. The building that was talked about graffitied, does not belong to us. The church that was there before it did belong to. They sold it separate from when we obtained the property. Our building, what little graffiti it has gotten, we have taken care of it. We have on Sunday morning between 200 and 250 people that come to our church from the neighborhood. They couldn't come here and speak because they're renters in those apartments that are so bad in the neighborhoods where the drug houses are. They see the need for it because they're living it. They see their family members are these drug, abusers that are needing to be directed and just help. They're wanting to change the cycle, but unless we give them help and train them and teach them how to stand and say no, they're not going to do it. We have no daycare on the facility. We have an after-school program that started. In the 5 buildings we have, Teen Challenge is looking at 2 buildings. The large sanctuary classroom building to the north is where our after-school program. There will be no... Children's safety is a big concern of ours. We do extensive background checks on everyone that is with the children. So they would not be mingling, and they would, the Teen Challenge people would not be volunteering anywhere there were children present with our facility. The fence, I can't speak for Mr. Gray, but I think that had already been in the works that they would have to have a fence and secure it because, he's taking all the precautions. So I just wanted to address those things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gray? Or Gary, I'm sorry.
No, that's Gray.
Well, it's mistyped here then. All right.
Oh, okay. Wayne Gray.
Yep.
The concern of a fence, that would be in the plans. Should we go in there would be, again, we do have security. We have live-in staff. Our people are not allowed to go and wander around. If someone says they want to quit the program, they usually, want to go out of the neighborhood, and we drive them to a bus. We drive them to a bus station, have someone come pick them up. So the coming and going is, I'm sure it's a concern, but we do have 24-hour security, and the plans would be, and we talked with Pastor Burke in the beginning when we began to talk about this relationship, was about a fence and all around the whole property there, and so that would be part of the plan should we go in and have a program there.
What kind of offenses will the people that are residents there, what type of offense will they be accused of? Is it strictly drug-related, or?
Well, we won't be taking anyone there that'll be ordered there by the courts. We're changing that from last month. The people that will be coming to us would be those who are struggling with life-controlling issues such as drugs and alcohol abuse or addiction.
But they won't be somebody that has gone through the court system that's been convicted of drug use or sales of drugs or whatever.
No, we do take that in our facilities, and nationally Teen Challenge does that, and I think the national statistic is 15% of the people in our programs were ordered there by the courts. But at that particular location, because of some of the issues that were raised last month, we will not take people that are ordered there by the courts.
I think, Jimmy, there's a distinction that is reasonable to be made. In other words, there may be a person who has a drug-related conviction or offense that then voluntarily might make a choice to go to this program. In other words, but they would not necessarily, I think the distinction we made last time is they wouldn't be part of a court-ordered drug and rehab treatment where you're dealt with in that scenario.
Yeah, it could be that they have that in their background, but they would not be. The time would already be served or whatever. If they did serve time, we would not take anybody in where the court says jail or go to.
Right.
They're there by choice.
Exactly.
They're
voluntarily entering the
we
program.
screen everyone that comes in. We do background checks. We don't take sex offenders and that. And we screen everybody anyway. We do random drug testing. We don't even allow smoking of tobacco. When they come in, they must go cold turkey off of everything, including tobacco. And so we do random drug tests, even tobacco tests. So if they're slipping out and coming back, they're going to get tested, and they know that. So that's a deterrent from going out in the neighborhood to try to find some drugs or something. But again, also there would be supervision there.
You can have as many as 35 people at that site.
We looked at the space available and the infrastructure there of those two buildings, and we feel 35 would be comfortable there.
How many security personnel will you have on 24 hours a day?
Well, we would have a staff of, with 35 people, we would have a staff of probably 8 to 10. Now, they wouldn't be there overnight. There would be live-in staff, though, probably.
My question is, how many security people will be there 24 hours a day? Not staff, I'm talking security. Somebody that can handle the situation.
Well, I would say at any time there would be one security person there at all. There would be strictly security, then there would be all the other staff as well. But someone that
you don't have one person, one security staff there for 35 people?
At nighttime, that's all it would. There would be staff living in the facility.
I understand the staff. Yeah. I'm talking about security.
But at nighttime, there would be probably one person that his job is to walk the grounds, be the security person, make sure nobody's wandering around. But again, there would be other people on the campus. So I don't know. I would think one person watching the grounds at night, making sure nobody's wandering around, would be sufficient. If he needed help, he's got people living right there to help with the situation.
James?
So basically you're talking about a designated staff person as your security, or do you have what does your security consist of?
Well, we don't have that at our other facilities because they're not up in a residence.
Excuse me, I'm talking about at this facility. Is it a designated staff that has been designated to be security, or do you have an actual security program set up?
No, there's no security program set up right now, but there will be security people.
Okay, Commissioners, further discussion, action?
The only thing I would like to just remind you about is that persons that are recovering from alcohol or drugs are defined as disabled under both the ADA and the Fair Housing Act. And you cannot unreasonably discriminate against them based upon their status as such. It would have to be for some other purpose.
If I may add, one security person, I ain't no way he'd handle 35.
You're assuming a riot of 35 people at one time rather than one person who might need attention, and I don't think that's realistic either. Commissioners, action?
see what he's got to add.
Go ahead,
Once
Mr.
again,
Shockley.
I'm Gary Shockley again. I think we need to understand that the staff here is not just, they're not just clinical people that have, like you normally have, like you have caseworkers and things like that. People in Teen Challenge are people most often who have had to deal with drug addiction and have gone through a 13-month program, and they're not even giving, even after they've graduated from the 13-month program, they're not even given a graduation certificate until they have proven that 6 months later that they're still clean and they're living a productive, useful life. But most often, the counselors are people who have gone through the program and then turn around and went through an additional training program to become ministers and to work in this program. And they're not novice. They understand all the tricks of the trade because they've lived it themselves previously. And so when we're talking about security, the people that are living with them know all the tricks because they've done it themselves previously, and they've cleaned up their life, and now they want to come back and do this ministry to help other people to find meaning for their life, and to this is a God-based ministry, and the people who are working this program are not fools. They understand all the tricks of the trade, and then we very seldom have real difficulties with people trying to outsmart them. The people that's working this program know how to handle it, and that's what I'm talking about. When we worry about security for one person, that's a kind of perimeter security, but I guarantee you the programs that I've seen, and oh, by the way, I am a retired city employee. I was stormwater manager, the environmental manager for Oklahoma City, and then later public works director for Mustang, and later public works director for Tuttle. But I am retired, and I have agreed to be on the board because it's a non-paid position, but I do it because I see the effectiveness and the success of this program and the ministry it does for people who have real problems, and the success of the program worldwide. And what we're concerned about here, the issues of impacting the neighborhood, I could personally guarantee you're not going to see the problems that's being conceived here, because this program is an effective, life-changing program, and it's a real ministry. That's why we were asked to come in, because she knew the dire need that her community had, and that's why Teen Challenge was recommended and asked to come in and to participate to help her community. So I'm sorry, but I feel very emphatic about this program because I've been privileged to get to go to the graduations and see the changes in lives, and the success rate of this program. I have family that work the government-sponsored drug programs that you're talking about. They have a 36% success rate. Teen Challenge, the success rate is 82%. That's unheard of in the drug rehab business. So I just wanted to reassure people that this is not just a common, ordinary type of drug rehab program that you're used to seeing and hearing about. But people's lives are very changed, and it's a very professionally ran, well-managed program. It's not just haphazard and we're just a bunch of goofy Christians out here trying to do the right thing. It is well-run, well-managed, and it changes people's lives.
Thank you.
Have you ever seen a UCF?
Mr. Garrison, we're not having a debate here.
Okay. I was asked to call the police department and ask them on a UCR report, which stands for a Uniform Crime Report. Within the last year, our drug-related in just that neighborhood, there's been like 525 arrests. Convictions, there has not been one. They've all been turned back loose on the street. So, like I said, this ain't no debate, but it's not a bad program, but it's wrong location for this.
Thank you.
You know, I don't really have any problem with the program. I don't think I know enough about it to recommend approval for this. I think, they've mentioned fences, they've mentioned security, and when I talk security, I mean trained security, somebody that can handle a situation that is out of hand physically. And I don't know what you mean by fencing. You said fencing the whole property? Is that what you're going to do?
Except for the drives into the parking lot, because there's a church, they need that. Yes, just that's in the plans to do that. But again, I think this picture this is a flop house or a place where people, there's a rigid screening process, and they have to prove to us they want to be there. So again, one person doing the perimeter at night, people getting up and roaming around, it's not an issue in any of our programs. And I feel one person, and if he sees something, there's other staff on the property to help with it, but we've never had a riot of any teen challenge in the nation. There's 280 centers in the United States, and I'm not aware of any incidents in any neighborhoods anywhere, because if we were, I'm sure it would be, I would be privileged to that, because I've been involved in this work for 25 years. And so it's not a flop house where people are coming and going. It's people have to go through a rigid screening process to say that they want help from their problems. And not everybody finishes the program right, but most people, when they want to leave, they come to us and say, either I've gotten enough help and I'm ready to leave, or this isn't for me and I'm ready to leave. The roaming around thing is just, it's not an issue in any of our programs, and I don't really think it's going to be one there either.
I'd like to make a couple of comments, if I could. One, when we get these kinds of applications, they're always difficult to talk through and think about, and there's typically always protest from neighbors. And as long as I've been on the commission, which is 10 years or so, we've considered a number of these applications over the years, approved generally the majority of them ultimately as we get them conditioned. And we don't get any feedback that they become problems once they're in operation in these neighborhoods. And that's pretty typically our experience. I'm persuaded by the fact that the people who participate in this program are there by choice. They don't have to be. No one's told them they have to be there. No court has forced them to be there. And I would, again, remind us of what Susan pointed out, which is, under the law, these people are disabled. And we need to be very cautious and judicious every time we consider an application of this sort. So those are my comments. I can't make a motion, but
I've got one question of our attorney. Can this be a conditional approval?
No, you cannot condition it on a number of years.
So we couldn't say, we want to see what happens over a year period and come back to us?
No, we can't do that on zoning. Okay. You could condition it, like limit the number of people and that kind of things, but not the zoning of it.
Could we say start off with 10, if it goes well, get 20, and if it goes well, get 35?
You could approve it for something, but they'd have to come back and amend it through the normal process later.
Would you be willing to do that?
Well, I think it's a 35-bed facility. I mean, I would rather see it disapproved today under our application for instead of having to do this and come back after. So whatever number, and the facilities is plenty large for that. There's plenty of room. There used to be a school there in the past, so there's plenty of rooms. There's commercial kitchen. The infrastructure is there, and I would like to see it approved for that number or a number, around 35.
James, Nick, and then Janice. Oh, Nick, okay. Don't fight over there.
My hang-up here has been, I think you've got a great program. I like the voluntary part of it. I like the success rate. I agree with what you said, John. What I'm having trouble with is the fact that where this is, what this is. We are taking a school, somehow we, admittedly with commercial kitchen and all that, obviously they don't have, for that, but somehow we are transforming that into a 24/7 living facility for 35 people, plus staff. So in essence, what we're doing is sticking a small hotel right in the middle of this neighborhood, integrating it with the church. While I'm supportive of the program, questioning the use from a land use standpoint of the facility. Maybe if we knew more about the facility and how it's going to integrate with, it was a school and we have an existing church there, and how we're going to build out a dormitory and what it's going to be like. And I'm not looking at a flop house, as you said, but what am I? And I know I'm not, but, are we going to just have a couple of huge dormitory type deals with cots? We're going to have individual rooms? How does this thing operate? The security issue, I'm not as concerned about security per se, perhaps Commissioner Allen is, because it is voluntary and you've taken the court deal out. I'll tell you, with what everyone we've seen before that the Chairman referred to have been special permit deals where they were different. You're not asking for that special permit. I'm trying to reconcile the use of this, or converting this school that's integrated with a church into this 24-hour living facility. That's the only hang-up I have. If I can get over that hump, I can certainly support this application.
James? Okay. Janice?
Will the people who live in your facility have their own vehicles?
No.
And
We
they
don't allow them to have their own vehicle. They're not allowed to have a job on the outside. We do everything as a group. The only time they get to go on outside is if they get an earned pass, and that's with their family comes and gets them and takes them somewhere and brings them back, and that's only after they've been there for months. Prior to that, they can only be visited there. So, no, it's a strict residential program. It's not transitional living.
So for all intents and purposes, they are confined to this location?
Yeah, and when we go places, we would go as a group.
That might have been beneficial if you started with that, just as a matter of presence about your application. Not to be critical, because you don't do this a lot, I think you drove. But I think given the number of comments with respect to moving around the facility and the neighborhood, it might have been beneficial to know that, one, there's not outdoor access other than in this group, and two, that when they go other than accompanied by family members, unless they just happen to walk out the door. That would have been beneficial, I think.
I agree with all the comments that have been made. To me, the problem that we always have with these kinds of applications, I think most of us feel positive about your program. And certainly there is the need for this type of help out there. But, of course, the approval that we are giving you, though it is tailored somewhat to your needs and particular mode of operation, is not being given to you or to your program. It's a land use blanket, if you will, that will remain on the land even should you depart away. And that is somewhat problematic for me. If it were possible for us through some sort of license or some sort of approval to allow you to operate this facility at this location and perhaps for a limited period of time and so forth, that might be a much easier decision to make. And I am struggling, I must say, a little bit with the fact that we have a very limited amount of control over, it's not the kind of situation where they're going to come back to us in a year or in 2 years, or where we're going to have any follow-up with respect to how well it's going or not going and so forth. I mean, this is a decision that we have to make and then sort of let go of. It's impossible to ignore the concerns that are being expressed here today by the neighbors. But at the same time, it is often the case, I don't know how to say this exactly, fear of the unknown, motivates all of us to be concerned about things that are coming toward us that we can't control and don't really understand. And it is often the case with these kinds of facilities that they have a much more positive impact than negative impact once they are in place. And I would certainly like to believe that that's the truth with respect to this particular application. But the two sides of that are what is making this a difficult decision for me. We don't have any real authority or ability to oversee how well this goes. And clearly the neighbors are very concerned about the impact of it. At the same time, it really is just purely a land use decision. We've got to make a decision based on whether this is an appropriate location for a residential facility for 35 people, basically.
May I ask you a question? Go ahead. I ask a question, and then it'll dictate another question depending on the answer to this question. Going the route of a special use permit, could we put it in place for a certain amount of time if we went a special use permit with this?
Well, that was my question. Why haven't you asked for the special use permit? Why?
They don't need to, and this is not the sort of a program that requires, it's not a conditional use.
I know that's not required,
right.
But
maybe they could. That's my question.
Required is one thing, but
With that, we would have some sort of control. Would that be possible if it's acceptable to the applicant?
I don't know. You probably need to ask JJ that. I don't.
JJ? Could a special use permit give us the opportunity to limit the time frame that it would exist if they would go to special use?
First of all, could they ask for one? They're not required to have one, but could they?
I don't think so. I don't think you can really treat this any different than you would any other group residential use. I don't think you could put any conditions on it that you would put on any other residential application.
That's the problem I'm having, though. It's group residential in this converted school that...
Okay. Maybe the analysis for us ought to be perhaps we shift the focus. Number one, I think there's two things that we need to keep in mind. That is Susan's comment with respect of disabled people and the definition of this particular person. So basically the question I would suggest is this. If this were an application to put 35 Alzheimer's patients into this particular location, let's just change the dynamic, okay? Because I think that should not be our focus with respect to this particular application. It's the use. If we were to say this should be a group home for 35 Alzheimer's patients, where would we get to in that case?
I would have the same hang-up on
but then that's the issue that's the fundamental issue that I think we need to vote on. Is this use appropriate for a residential, as Janice just said, residential living facility at this particular location? That's it. This is a nice program. You could have been the Alzheimer's care unit. I think the analysis for us is non-discriminatory with respect to that. It should be non-discriminatory. It's a land use issue. And we need to focus on that particular bit of the application. Frankly, I think the program is good. However, I think your program's good, the next program may not be so good. And the consideration that Janice raises is legitimate in that it's like our same decisions with respect to, no offense, but the substances that bring your people to you. Putting in alcohol, putting in bars. It stays there forever. This operator's good, the next operator's bad. So I think that we need to maybe shift our dynamic to the use. And if we're not comfortable with putting a residential facility there of any sort, then that ought to be our focus.
Any further comment, Commissioners?
And I don't really want to muddy these waters any, but I do want to ask Susan Randall a question. It seems to me I remember that there has been a whole line of case law with respect to the ability of unrelated persons to live together as a family, and how you define that and for these residential kinds of facilities. I mean, if we were talking about 35 related persons, would it make any difference at all in terms of the decision that we're making here today?
I'm not really sure how to answer that. I know that, it's similar to our, like, if it was in just a residential area and we've had more than 5 unrelated people living together, instead of rezoning, because it may not have been quite this much, we've had to make a reasonable accommodation in our policies. I'm not sure I can answer how to answer that question if they were related.
I think we've got to have a motion. I mean, look, let's just up or down. These people have been down here twice. I'll move approval.
Second. And I'll comment before I vote that I think putting an operation like this in a neighborhood like the residents themselves have described adds some stability to the area. I think it's potentially a positive.
Well, I remember one further thing from the last time we were here. The church serves the community. The church is behind the application. And from the statements that I've heard, that seems to me to be an indication that there is some residential presence with respect, protesters not accepted. I mean, that there is some presence in the community that supports this particular use at this particular location. And so that's part of my thought process additionally.
Okay, cast your votes. And it is approved.
Item 14 is ABC 720, an application by Terry Lottie for an ABC 3 overlaying the I-2 Modern Industrial District, 7901 South Easton Avenue, Ward 4.
Yes.
I'm going to break in just a minute.
I'm Terry Lottie. My address is 4001 Southeast 112th Street. And I'm here to answer any questions.
No one has signed up, Commissioners. They're just increasing the fun at the beer bar. Cast your votes, and it's approved. We'll take a 10-minute break. Okay, we are back in session and are on item number 15.
Item number 15 is PC 10259, which is an application by BAM Investments, LLC, to rezone 9600 South Bryant from PUD 578 to I-1 Single Family, Ward 4.
Lindsay Settle with Crafton Toll Sparks representing the applicant. The purpose of our application is to rezone the subject property from the current PUD zoning to straight R1 zoning. In doing so, it meets the city's master development plan and is compatible with the surrounding zoning in the area. And after meeting with staff, we've discussed that it would be best to just do a straight zoning to clean up the master plan and to do what our client is wanting to do.
Commissioners, no one signed up.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 15. Cast your votes. And you're approved. Thank you.
Item 16 is C 6232. It's a preliminary plat of Bryan Place.
Lindsay Settle with Crafton Toll Sparks representing the applicant. We've read through the staff report and agree with all of the TEs. Prior to the meeting, we did discuss with staff on TE number 3 to have it amended to discuss traffic recommendations prior to Phase 1, the Phase 1 final plat.
Okay, again, no one has signed up, Commissioners.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion second to approve item 16. Cast your votes. And you're approved.
I'm sorry, do we need to change TE1
Or 3?
to reflect that? Or, I'm sorry, 3 to reflect
Yeah, I think
that?
we do.
Yes.
So what was your agreement on that? That you would review?
That we would discuss and review any recommendations prior to the final plat of Phase 1 and
Okay,
work
so
with
we-
traffic on that.
So you're reserving any traffic improvements or further discussion on that till you get to final?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, on Phase
Yes.
Phase 1 final?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Item 17 is SPUD 581, an application by Justin Rose to rezone 1101 Southwest 149th Street from AA Agricultural to SPUD 581.
Mr. Chairman, Dennis Box, I'm here with Justin. We would like to take the remaining property as shown as subject and develop that for a single-family residence that will probably in all essence have some accessory buildings. Most of the single-family homes out in this area do. It's kind of rural in nature. So we can agree to technical evaluation 1 and 2. And I don't know if there's any protests, but...
Again, no one has signed up.
I'll move approval.
Second. We have a motion and second to approve item 17. Cast your votes. And you're approved.
Thank you very much.
Item 18 is CE 788, an application by the City of Oklahoma City to close the walkway easement in Hillcrest Heights Addition in Ward 5.
Nope. Nobody signed up. We don't need it.
I'll move approval of the application.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 18. Cast your votes. That's approved.
Item 19 is ABC 718, an application by Jalila Reyes for an ABC 1 overlaying the I-1 Light Industrial District of 2631 Southwest 29th Street, Ward 6.
Hi, my name is Alila Reyes. My address is 2115 Southwest 34th, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions.
No one has signed up, Commissioners. I'll say that for the rest of the cases on the docket. No one has signed up, so I won't repeat myself.
Second.
We have a motion second to approve item 19. Cast your votes. You're approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 20 is SPD 583, an application by Bell Development LLC to rezone 14113 and 14105, 14033, 14013, and 14009 Northeastern from PUD 360 to SPUD 583, Ward 7.
Oh, there are protesters. I'm sorry.
Brian Coon with Coon Engineering, represent the applicant. No TEs on this to agree with or argue with, so be glad to answer your questions.
Commissioners?
Suppose we ought to deny it if no TEs. Move approval.
Motion and second to approve item 20. Cast your votes. It's approved.
Thank you.
Item 21 is PC 10258, an application by LKC Town Center, LLC, to rezone 215 North Walnut from PUD 1078 to DBD Downtown Business District, Ward 7.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'm here on items 21 and 22. 21 deals with converting this back to straight zoning. We think straight zoning, which you see directly to the west of the site, is appropriate. This will be a hotel, and then the second application is a closing that will allow for the hotel to be constructed. We're here to answer any questions. There's a number of people in the audience that are here on behalf of this project. If you all have questions. The next docket, you'll see another application north of this that will be for apartments, and we are excited that we can have a hotel and apartments and kind of get some more activity in this part of the downtown area.
Dennis, why are you doing this in straight zoning? Since you know what you're doing, why aren't you putting it to SPUD or PUD?
Well, when we looked at the zoning that was directly to the west, and we looked at the DBD ordinances, they allow for and provide for the uses that we think are appropriate. And so the previous PUD just had one problem with it, and that was a height issue. So as we looked at it, coordinated with your staff, we came back and decided that straight zoning was appropriate at this location.
Thank you.
Any other comments, action?
Move approval.
We have a motion second to approve item 21. Cast your votes. That's approved.
Item 22 is a companion item, CE 786. It's an application by OKC Town Center to close alleys in this vicinity in Ward 7.
Here again, Dennis Fox on behalf of the applicant. This will allow for the development of the hotel. In connection with 21 and 22, I will tell you, when you look at 21, it talks about a site triangle. I've coordinated with staff, and they've indicated that's not any longer needed. So I wanted to make sure the commission was aware of that. But in regard to the closing, this will allow us to develop the site to its full potential.
We have a motion second to approve item 22. Cast your votes. That's approved.
Thank you very much.
Item 23 is PUD SB 1369, application by Texok Properties for a specific plan pursuant to the approval of PUD 1369 at 1000 East Britton Road, Ward 7.
Good afternoon. Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates. We do represent the applicant. I want to apologize. On August 12th, I must have walked out and didn't know this was on the agenda, so you guys continued it for me. I appreciate that. This is a specific site plan approval as required in the PUD. All that is being built at this time is the parking lot and the landscaping associated with the parking lot. And if you'll recall, on this track, the west half of the track, west of the lakes, is for an office development that's been platted. You all have approved the plat. We're finishing up the improvements for the plat, and the plat will be ready to go on to council very soon. Once this specific site plan is approved for the parking lot, then you'll see individual specific site plans for each lot that gets sold there. And we'll be back before you a number of times.
Move the approval of this application if there is no protest.
Second. We have a motion second to approve item 23. Cast your votes. And that's approved. James, I said earlier that no one has signed up for any of the remaining cases, so good.
Item 24 is PUD 1418, an application by Village Verde Developers, LLC, to rezone 11401 Northwest Expressway from AA Agricultural to PUD 1418, Ward 8.
Michael Navarre, General Manager of Village Verde Developers, speaking on behalf of items 24 and 25. We are the master developer for the School Land Commission of 475 acres between Mustang Road and Piedmont Road, bisected by Northwest Highway, 122nd to the south and Memorial Road to the north. It's designed to be a green, mixed-use development with varying tracks. We have a quick... We are a group of with residential, commercial, and senior housing backgrounds. The tracks are shown here through 18 different tracks, consisting of R1, R4, C3, O2, and I1. The goal here is shown with the residential separated by a large common area that will remain intact, consisting of roughly 96 acres of open space and common area. We have 230 acres of residential R1, 17 acres of R4, and which will be limited to 2 units high. Our intent is not for apartments, but brownstones and townhomes, and allowed for senior housing. Varying types of residential here, single family, and then we're asking for alley-loaded entries on our brownstones and townhomes. We have a live-work component that's shown within our C3 area, and an example of the senior housing. We are asking within our commercial sector, which is bordered by Northwest Highway, both north and south sides, or angled parking, reduced setbacks, larger sidewalks, and all for a pedestrian-friendly environment. Our community and green portion, we are, like I said, designed to be a green community. We're having 20% open space. We're applying for NAHB Green Community Design, which is a third-party verification of land management practices. We'll have our own internal Village Verde Green program, requiring all residences to have third-party green certification on energy use. Be maintaining ecologies and wetlands and stream preservations throughout, as well as creating those. We understand we are a gateway to Oklahoma City and beyond, and we want to make sure that we specify it as we can both come to a conclusion that we want it to be consistent throughout. We are asking for congregate signage within our C3 tracks, and then we are asking for 10-foot monument signs for the individual tenants within those C3 tracks along Northwest Highway. Some quick examples of consistency of material and heights. I have our engineer of record and our traffic engineer here to answer any technical questions. Any of you have any questions?
Commissioners?
You've worn me out. Move approval of the application. Well, no, a couple of comments. This is a rather large PUD, has multiple tracks. Depends on how you count them, 18 or 20 if you stretch them. A lot of signage. You'll notice the signage has been brought down. There's been 2 meetings Chairman and I have had with the applicant. They've addressed, I believe, most of our issues, and I don't have a problem with it. I'd move approval.
Well, I'd compliment the applicant and their associates for taking the time to come and talk to a number of us on more than one occasion and respond to the kinds of comments and suggestions that we've made, because this is a large, complex project, and it takes a little more study on our part than a lot of applications that we see. So we certainly appreciate the effort that you have made to work with us on this.
Thank you.
I didn't hear a second, or did I? I'm sorry. Oh, James, thank you. Any other discussion, Commissioners? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 24. Cast your votes, and that's approved.
Item 25 is C-6225, which is a preliminary plat of Village Verde.
And we have a variance, by the way.
I'm Tom McCaleb, engineer for the applicant. Again, they respond to any questions.
Tom, would you talk a little bit about TE3 and the variance?
That is the road. We initially had a 24-foot road section to go into some of the single-family and the commercial area. We have abandoned the residential area. It will go only in the commercial areas. So that's 24 feet wide. We've given cross-section to the Director of Public Works, and with assistant engineer, they reviewed them, and they found them satisfactory. So that's been limited just to those areas and none into the single-family areas where the standard 26-foot curb section is.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion, Commissioners?
Move variance on TE3. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the variance to TE3. Cast your votes. That's approved.
And I move the application subject to the TE.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 25. Cast your votes. And you're approved. Thank you.
Item 26 is SPUD 570, an application by J&G Estates, LLC, to rezone 13100 Colony Point Boulevard from PUD 1147 to SPUD 570 in Ward 8.
My name is Bob LaBar. My address is 2701 West Britton Road, and I'm here to represent the applicant. I might mention this was in an existing PUD 1147. It is an existing structure. The original PUD covered approximately 136 acres. The current owner purchased Tract 4 in that PUD, which is the site plan that you, or the diagram that you see on the board there. And this consists of about 3 acres of the original PUD. The new owner of this property is interested, as the last applicant, in promoting a green and clean environment in this area. And in order to do that, we're asking for a few changes to the original PUD. The first request concerns signage. The original PUD, is this, I don't know how to work this. Just try something. Nope.
Well, that appears to be your project. Here we go.
And now what I push to go to the next exhibit. Okay. Anyway, the original PUD for Tract 4 allowed for 2 signs, one being a monument sign, no greater than 15 feet in height and 200 square feet in area, with 20 foot of landscaping at the base. The original site plan, can that move down a little bit? Okay. The original site plan has the original sign approved where the blue line is on that site plan. And we're asking to change the location of the sign to where the red line is and have it, and I've got some sign pictures later, but, and have a 20-foot tall sign with an additional 10-foot windmill. It's actually 10 foot taller than the sign, and that windmill is actually a wind generator to create the power to drive the sign. Also at the base of this sign, there will be a location to recharge electric vehicles. Some of you might be aware the City of Oklahoma City is installing recharging stations downtown Oklahoma City for this same purpose. We've also given you a choice of a second sign. I know we're not asked to do that. One of the problems we have with this property is that the site sits about 10 feet below highway grade level. And if you put a 15-foot sign where it's allowed, the top of the sign will only extend above highway level by a few feet. In other words, you won't be able to see the whole sign until you're right up on the property. We've had ODOT out there twice to look at this, and they have some concerns about the safety issues of being able to see the sign before you get to the site. We would have to get we've asked ODOT for an easement to place the sign out there. I was going to talk about the sign. But ODOT has a drainage easement there, and they've taken more drainage easement than they really need, so they're working with us on the site. I think that covers the signs. Our second request is to allow electric vehicle sales and service on this site. After meeting with Commissioner Gales, he has some concerns about electric vehicle sales on the highway frontage. So we've agreed to limit the vehicle sales to the northernmost building on the site. So there would be nothing on the highway frontage. It would be limited to the roughly 7,600 square foot building to the north. And in the third request, just to make all of this feasibly possible and make this shopping center leasable, we're asking that alcohol beverage retail sales be allowed in this spud. There are currently no existing structures within 2 miles of this where alcohol beverage retail sales can be allowed, and thus we're requesting that it be allowed on this site. I apologize. I hope I haven't made it too confusing. I was watching what was going on and got a little concerned. Anyway, I appreciate your time and patience, and I'll take questions.
Well, let's clarify a couple of things. The sign issue. Your preference on the sign is for sign number 1, the red sign?
That is exactly correct, yes, sir.
And your preference for that sign is to have it located out on the right-of-way?
Yes, sir.
And then it would be 30 feet tall?
Yes, sir. The sign itself would be 20 with an additional...
Right, and the windmill would be a total of 30. However, if you don't secure ODOT approval, you would move it back into where it's shown as blue, but then it would need to be a total of 40 feet. The windmill would need to be 40 feet high.
That is correct.
Okay. I want everyone to understand that. The other thing on the zoning for alcohol, you're not asking for an ABC overlay to serve drinks. You're asking to include the use in the zoning so that you could have a liquor store there. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And then the last part of the application is also take the north building that has about 7,600 square feet in it, 7,572 feet, and be able to actually display and sell electric vehicles.
Yes, sir.
So when I first heard about this application, I was called and we want to put a windmill sign on the Northwest Highway. I said, what? Would you repeat that? Just didn't sound like it would work. When I looked at what they're proposing, I think it's kind of a neat idea, and I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with the windmill. I don't have a problem with the sign. I don't have a problem with what they're asking for in alterations for the PUD. So I would, with no protest, what you said there aren't any, I'd move approval.
I think we've got an emerging sign technology coming this way. And we're going to see...
I got one question on the cars. Is it my understanding from 0 to 120 in 6 seconds?
That's the man that owns the car.
That's a Tesla.
I got to have some kind of a G-force suit on before you drive one?
I've been going to a chiropractor for 6 weeks because it's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
And Janice, did you have something before I get into this TE deal?
Well, I just wanted to ask, this actually backs up to, are these residential lots behind this?
To the north.
Yeah. Right. I'm not finding in my staff report reference to lighting. My whole thing about, car lots and residential is that light is daylight thing.
This is not a car lot. It's all indoors. All the cars are going to be in the building. It's going to be a showroom. The service they refer to is simply charging cars. The real car lot is over on Piedmont Road to the north.
In the city of Piedmont.
And then the other...
Having said all that, I would really like to know that there is included in here some language that's going to prevent light spillover onto the residential properties that adjoin this.
There is no light. No lighting changes from what's already there. The light's already there for the shopping center. It's an existing center.
Correct.
My question is, if we allow this sign in an either-or deal, assuming they can get or don't get ODOT approval, how does that modify TE1, JJ?
You just need to delete the first paragraph of TE1.
Just delete it.
Just delete it.
That would be my motion, to delete that and allow them either a 30-foot on the right-of-way sign, total height for the windmill, or 40 feet if they have to move it back downgrade.
I just had one question, though. I mean, I'm back to Janice's point, because I'm not absolutely confident that I understand that I don't have the benefit of the other PUD document, and we're adding a use unit for auto dealership, auto mall / dealership, and so I want to be. I'm leaning toward agreement with Janice that we don't want to add an auto dealership. I'm just so. I got the lights there, but I don't have the benefit of the other document from my packet, so I can verify what the lighting requirements are, and I don't want, like we've got in some of our car dealerships backing up to residential uses, huge amount of light spillover. And so no offense to the electric car business, I'm a fan, but if it doesn't work, then we may have an auto mall and an auto dealership on this site directly abutting residential to the north. And I think we need to be cognizant of that.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, sir, doesn't this PUD require a showroom, and there will be no car dealer, like a bunch of cars parked outside? Everything is inside?
Nothing on the outside will be changed. No lighting, no construction, everything will stay exactly the same.
Says further limited to indoor sales of electric vehicles.
Yeah. Indoor sales.
Right.
That's the key. This is, not a car dealer like we picture car dealers. And even that being the case, we talked about moving it off the highway to the back of the property.
We could add some standard lighting language in case the site's ever redeveloped, then it would be in there.
Okay. I'd amend the motion to add that and delete the first paragraph of TE1. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 26. Cast your votes. There we go. Motion passes.
Item 27 is 6230C, 6233, final plat of Tallwater Office Park, north of Memorial Road.
Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates again. This is a minor subdivision plat that will allow a total of 3 buildings to be built on this tract. It's in conformance with the modification to the subregs that was made recently. There's currently a very large law building being built on Lot 1, and now we're coming into plat to allow for 2 more smaller buildings in the back, a total of 12,000 feet total. We agree with all the TEs.
Tim, explain, if you would, for me, TE3, the water issue that you need a variance for. You caught your spice.
You did. I didn't bring the staff report up here.
There's a variance to the requirement that each lot within the subdivision be served with public water. And we're going to do some sort of a private water line?
No. There is public water through there. The services from the water itself, meter, will go within the easement. The services will go across a shared common area to serve each building. But I'm not sure that requires a variance. I mean, that's pretty common to run a service line across common area or a private UE.
JJ, can you help me?
Subdivision regulations require a public line to every lot in the subdivision.
Public line abutting.
Yeah. So
I guess we will need a variance.
Okay.
The water line is public. The services, it's just that the water line does not abut each lot. It's in its own easement, and then there's a common area space and a common lot line that would be separated between the water line easement and the lot itself.
Okay, so
will each building be separately metered, or are they? Okay. Approve the variance on T3.
We have a motion and a second to approve the variance on T3. Cast your votes. That's approved.
Move the application.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 27. Cast your votes. And that's approved.
Item 28 is SP 424, an application by Edmond Public Schools for a special permit to develop athletic fields in association with the middle school in PUD 163.
Good afternoon. My name is Sean Willis, representing Edmond Public Schools. We are here to ask for a special permit to make improvements to existing softball, baseball fields at Summit Middle School. I'll answer any questions.
Commissioners?
What about lights?
It includes field lighting. There is, the project includes field lights for both projects, for both fields. They're existing ball fields. We're going to rebuild the dugouts, more permanent dugouts, a small storage building for equipment, but the majority of the project is field lighting.
And what's that property back behind you? Is it vacant?
It's vacant. It's all in the same PUD, but it's all vacant. It's all currently.
What's it zone?
I believe part of it, it's mixed use. Part of it is R1, I believe.
I see R3 to the north, Mike.
Yeah, I was just curious.
And R3 and R4 to the west, so apartments, essentially.
Well, are your lights going to be obtrusive to the R1?
As athletic lights go, obviously they're tall lights that are angled, and you can't necessarily do cutoffs on field lighting because you're trying to, light such a large area. As such, they are designed to limit us at that area. They're not designed to, cover more than the field is required.
But you could also control the hours of the lighting.
Right.
Like they'll be turned off by 10 o'clock or something like that.
You don't have 11 o'clock softball games, do you?
I don't believe they do, and I know that it is, as a middle school is concerned, it's not a high school, and so it is mostly practice, and it's not as common of a use of a field as the main high school fields are. It's it's an extra field that they would use for when those other fields are either overscheduled or for tournaments or things like that.
I'd be comfortable if you'd put a restriction in here, or agree to a restriction in here that, the lights would be off by no later than 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Probably 11. And see middle school kids getting into 10.
Right, and that could be controlled with timers on those lights.
Well, but I would like to control it
Right, but I'm saying that we can easily do that if that's something you're asking for.
So you want to add a TE?
I'd like to add a TE that the lights won't be on past 11 p.m.
Fine. If the applicant agrees with that, we're good to go.
That's fine.
Okay.
With that modification, I'd move approval.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 28 as conditioned. Cast your votes, and you're approved. Thank you.
Item 29 is PUD SP 1281, an application by Watermark at Toscana Residential Apartments for a specific plan at 2600 Northwest 150th Street.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I'm Brett Mann. Got Corey Lips also with Massey Mann Associates representing Watermark Residential for this development. I'll be happy to address any questions or discussion you may have.
Okay. Commissioners, no TEs, and of course no one signed up. Any?
Well, if there are no questions, Mr. Chairman, I'd note that the staff has found that they think the proposed plan is in accordance with the SPUD and recommend approval, so I'd move approval.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 29. Cast your votes, and you're approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 30 is C 6237, which is the final plat of Watermark at Toscana.
You're back.
Same.
And you're good with the TEs, I assume?
On 30, there's a couple of technical evaluations that were listed on there that I think through the course of the day have been addressed. One relating to storm sewer.
It's our understanding that item 4 of the P&Es have been removed. Is that correct? Okay, item 4 is deleted. We have no objections to the
Okay.
TEs.
Well, the first three are
Okay.
housekeeping. And 4 has been deleted. I'd move approval noting the deletion of TE number 4.
It's deleted now. Do we have a second? Second. Okay. Motion and second to approve item 30 minus TE number 4. Cast your votes, and you're approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 31 is C 6236, which is the final plat of Stony Creek Office Park in Ward 8.
Lex Gurania with MGR Inc. This plat has been approved as SPUD about 2 months ago, and plat has been prepared in accordance with the SPUD. We have reviewed all the TEs and we agree with it. And TE number 3, the variance, we ask you to approve it. It's as per the approved SPUD master plan. It's a very small subdivision, about 3.5 acres, and we are asking for a 50-foot right-of-way and 26-foot wide street.
Your paving width is going to meet standard. You're just asking
Yes.
for
Yes, sir.
And TE number 5 is coming out, I understand. The notation of private drive.
Yeah, we will address all of the T's on our final plat.
Okay. Any other questions, Commissioners? Motion and variance?
move the variance, TE3.
We have a motion and a second to approve the variance TE3. Cast your votes, and that's approved.
Move the application deleting TE5.
Motion to approve item 31 is conditioned. Cast your votes, and that's approved. Thank you.
Item 32 is C 6238, which is the final plat of Regency Point, Section 3, Ward 8.
Kendall Dillon with Craft and Toll Sparks, representing the applicant. This is the third section of the Regency Point addition, and we're in agreement with T's number 1, 2. On T number 3, we are asking for a variance in regards to our preliminary plat being expired. Section 2 of Regency Point was actually constructed and the final plat filed in March of 2007. However, evidently the extension date for the 5 years is from Planning Commission approval, which happened in July of 2004. So we'd ask that you guys grant us a variance on that. On T number 4, We would ask that that be amended to read that we will provide an emergency access, that we will connect that emergency access from James Thomas Court coming out of Esperanza up to, once again, James Thomas Court, which will stub south in Section 3. I have visited with Fred Calhoun in the Fire Marshal's office. He's fine with that. By doing that, we are in compliance with your plan and your subdivision regulations, so we would ask that that TE be amended to that. We're also in agreement with the remainder TEs.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? Motion on the variance?
Move variance TE3.
A motion second to approve the variance TE3. Cast your votes. That's approved.
Move the application with the change to TE4 to allow for the access to be run south into Esperanza as described.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and second to approve item 32 as conditioned. Cast your votes, and that's approved. Thank you, Kendall.
Item 33 is C-6239, which is the final plat of Pleasant Grove, Section 1.
Again, for the record, Kendall Dillon with Crafton Toll Sparks, representing applicant. This is our first final plat. It's in it is a close model to the approved preliminary plat, so it's in compliance with that. We're in agreement with all of the TEs. However, we would ask that T number 3, in regards to the time at which the recreational amenities would be put in, that be modified to read that that we could have 20 occupancy permits prior to those amenities being constructed.
The reason don't want to put the playground in for the first guy.
Exactly. I mean, we're platting the common area, we're agreeing to put those amenities in, but we would like the ability to have, and, obviously if you have no homes there, there's no sense for playground equipment anyways. So we would just ask, and we think that that's reasonable, to say, hey, if you'll give us 20 occupancy permits, after that we'll have those in place.
It's fine, man.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. I move approval amending TE3 to provide for the 20 occupancy, issuance of 20 occupancy permits prior to the construction of any recreational improvements.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 33 as conditioned. Cast your votes, and that's approved.
Item 34 is V1-6175, an application by Galadia Development Company requesting a variance to Section 5.3.2 of the subdivision regs regarding paving width and minimum curve radius in the Galadia Residential Community Section X edition.
Tim Johnson. I'll try to be awake this time. This is a little bit of a unique situation in that this final plat of Section 10 has been before you already. It's been approved and it's recorded. Because of the downturn in the economy, there's been a little bit of change in the product that they want to market here, and it's they brought in some designers from other parts of the world, and they've come in with a design that they wanted to change the Promenade Square street to make it a little more urban style and very pedestrian oriented with the large park, linear park in the middle. And what their goal is to, as the exhibit shows, is to have a 12-foot driving lane, one way, around Promenade Square, off-street parking, and then to meet our fire and emergency service vehicle width, we're putting in pervious paving, an additional 8 feet beyond the 12 foot of asphalt or hard surface. So we would have a 20-foot driving lane. All these units are sprinkled. We met with the fire marshal. He was good with this design. We've actually used this pervious paving product in other projects successfully. So that is request number one for the variance. The other request, as you can see in the corners, would be the east side of the project. We're requesting a 36-foot radius in lieu of what the subregs typically call for, but we've run the traffic model for the fire truck turning, and the wheels stay on the pervious pavement. So everybody's good with that I know of. There are some other changes on the with the way the streets aligned on the that really don't affect the variance, but just so you'll know, we're lining up these streets. Originally they were offset a little bit, so we'll be granting an additional easement in a common area there. And then we've narrowed this Boulevard Street to allow for on-street parking for these units. All these units are served with the alley in the rear. So it's just it's an effort to have a narrow street but allow for company to come and park and not block the road. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Tim, with the parking spaces provided at each end of Promenade Square, could a fire truck get around the parked cars?
Yes, if you look at the hatch interior to the park, that allows their wheels to come off the paved area and onto the pervious paving, and there's enough room at that radius to allow the truck to make that turn.
So it would turn inside the parked?
No, the front wheels, for example, on a semi or a large fire truck, they're going to be on the paved area. It's the trailing wheels that usually trail at a narrower radius. And with the model we looked, and I apologize I didn't bring that exhibit, they can make that turn and their rear wheels stay on the pervious pavement.
But if cars are parked on the end, that still works?
Yeah, because the parking is beyond the 12 feet.
Okay.
It's in addition to the 12 feet.
All right. It's just hard for me to visualize, not knowing how that works exactly.
Unique.
I was teasing Tim on this application. I thought the fire marshal might allow a 5-foot sidewalk work for hard surface as long as the things were sprinkled. And these are sprinkled. But no, this does work. It does the whole 20 feet. With that, I'd move the variance.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 34. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Thank you. Then I guess we'd move the application if we need to. It's an application for a variance.
We don't need to. I don't think. We've just approved the whole thing. The application is the variance.
That's right.
Item 35 is an ordinance for public hearing regarding proposed amendments to Chapters 3 and 59 relating to appearance standards. And Aubrey is here to answer any questions on this. We've done several presentations, and the summary that we presented to you last time is now reflected in the ordinance format.
Commissioners, any questions of Aubrey, or do you want to?
Well, the only question I would have in light of our discussion earlier about not planting trees in the right-of-way, seems to kind of fly in the face of, but no discussion. I'd move approval of the amendment.
James, you made a motion? Nick? I'm sorry. Second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the amendments. Cast your votes. And they're approved.
Item 36 is a resolution amending the subdivision regs regarding design standards for residential streets. Similar scenario. Randy is here to answer any questions on this. As you'll recall, the number of proposed changes there diminished over time, so there's fairly minor amendments to the regs.
Commissioners?
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Item 36, cast your votes. And that's approved.
Item 37 is to introduce and set for public hearing on September 23rd a resolution of the City Planning Commission amending Section 5.1.1 of the subdivision regs as they relate to the city's comprehensive plan.
Dan, would you like to give some background on this for the commissioners who are not familiar with it?
Just a little background. We had a case that went to court on a plat in Nichols Hill Suburban Tracts Edition, and the Planning Commission had denied the application for the preliminary plat, and the grounds for the denial was it was not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. We tried that over in district court, and the judge held that the
essentially that the Planning Commission could not rely on the provisions of the comprehensive plan in denying a plat. But what we're trying to do is insert into the subdivision regulations sufficient language that it's clear that the Planning Commission may consider the comprehensive plan in determining whether or not to approve a plat.
Now, is that may or shall?
It is, it's may, it shall, I'm sorry, it shall.
Move to set it.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to set this for hearing on September 23rd. Cast your votes, and that's approved.
Then item 38 is to introduce and set for public hearing on September 23rd a resolution of the Planning Commission amending Article 5, Section 5.82 of the subdivision regs as they relate to sidewalk locations. And I thought
This is the one we wanted to refer back to staff. Does that take a motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to refer item 38 back to staff. Cast your votes, and that's approved. And item 39 is continued. We will now go into executive session. Oh, I need a vote to go into executive session. Give me.
So move.
Second.
Motion and second to go into executive session. Cast your votes, and we're going into executive session. Planning Department, Russell.
I'm not sure if we have anything coming up for UDC. Nothing immediate. Plan OKC is coming along well, and we will be starting the stakeholder input process here at the end of this month, October or so. So that's where we get down to the action of resolving the issues that have so far been identified, and making recommendations for incorporation into a new plan. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else.
Development Services, JJ. Municipal Councilor, Dan. Anything else? Citizens to be heard. Susan Aubrey, thanks for coming.
One thing on the matter that we referred back to staff regarding the water main issue.
Sidewalks.
Pardon me? The sidewalks water issue. So what are we? How are we going to? You guys want to just let me know what you want to do next, or call us, or how are we going to move that to where we want to have the conversation? Or should we have the conversation absent staff?
You can determine what you can form another committee.
I want to form another.
Tack it on to garage fence.
Yeah, I know, but that's where the issue came from. It's where, so, well, maybe we just talk offline after the meeting about how you want to.
We can do that. I mean, we've had discussions with utilities before, and I guess we need to re-engage that process. Poor old Aubrey's the one who's been dealing with that.
Perhaps you could express our concern, and then if we need to, we're happy to participate.
Right.
Members of our committee.
I think maybe we
I'm
need
always happy to participate, but Michael will make himself available.
I will make myself available for any.
Well, I think we need to participate in order to give Aubrey some backup on what it is we are concerned about. So,
okay.
I'll be happy to do that as well.
Yeah.
Any other business? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second to adjourn. Approved. We are adjourned.